Another episode of By the Numbers. I'm your host, Richard Lewis. Joining me as he always does, it is the esports historian, or indeed just esports now. He's had an upgrade. He is now just the full entirety of the industry.
I'm the avatar.
Get full Palpatine out of his mind. How are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, generally all right. Obviously, I haven't had a great time because people have been trying to destroy my mental strength, but luckily for them, made us sterner stuff. I will say one thing, just as look, people are gonna. I'm gonna say right now, people are gonna be very disappointed in this episode because they think we're about to go into petty grievances and do 1 hour on the female. Not a fucking chance. Like that's literally not even going to be a topic here. We've literally covered that topic to death. And I myself have about 5 or 6 videos where I literally get like the most in-depth, interesting people, everything. But what I will say, just this one thing I do want to put in the show is fuck Benekagi Assassin. They can keep your money, mate. I don't give a fuck though. Like you will never ever be legit to me for 1 second in your life. The way you actually tried to use your position to fucking call Semmer out for things he didn't say. Then when people pointed out, but he didn't say any of those things, you sort of like pivoted to like, yeah, but people like him. Was like, fuck you, fuck you. The idea you throw $1 down on the counter and then you just get to abuse anyone in the scene for as long as you no fuck you, mate. So I don't care. Like they might want your money, mate. So keep doing the Patreon if you want, but I don't give a flying fuck.
Oh, talking about people who throw dollars down on the counter. Our sponsors do. Obviously, we've got NordVPN, our VPN sponsor. Been with us for fucking ages now. But you can still get 74% off their product if you go to nordvpn.com/RLS. And remember, we're like one of the few podcasts, talk shows, non-gamers that they actually sponsor. And it's been a very good partnership so far, and long may it continue. And of course, Steel Series, all throughout the festive period, been sponsoring us as well, our hardware and peripheral sponsor. You can still get 10% off anything in the Steel Series store if you just use the referral code Richard Lewis, all one word, no space. So look, the original plan, by the way, for the episode was we were gonna do our traditional end of year special, which we usually do before the end of the year. But you know, everything's been up in the air. People have been traveling. The tournaments went relatively late in. People wanted some time off to decompress Christmas. So the show after this one should be that one. And then we'll do all our end of year awards, sneakiest rat and all of that. So Sam, that's your project from now until then. Remember all of the awards, because I only just
look up the last one, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Listen to the last one on 2 times speed. So let's just jump right into the deep end, I guess, because you know there's been some news despite it being the end of the year. And I suppose we'll start with, we've had the Team Liquid confirmations in that OC is definitely joining. Liquid have officially confirmed him, and at the day of recording this, it has actually happened. A move that seemed unbelievably unlikely at the time it was reported. I never bought it. I'll be real with everybody here. I thought something's gone wrong there. I asked around, people were like, yeah, there was, you know, people sort of made inquiries because they knew Vitality was breaking apart, but nothing's been set in stone. But it has happened. Shox is going to be rifling for Team Liquid. Of course, we do fully expect Nitro to be the last name that's announced. I don't know why that's a holdout at the moment. Might be something to do with his contract over at 100 Thieves expiring at the start of the year or something like that. But anyway, Shox and OC to Liquid. We did talk a little bit about this lineup theoretically, but now that it's confirmed, are you surprised?
Like, here's the thing. In terms of surprised, like I am and I aren't. Like I am in the sense that like I really still don't understand who at Team Liquid wants these moves. Like what I'm trying to conceive of in my mind is Elige really that unpopular now that the shortlist contained these names anywhere near the top? Because that's what I can't comprehend. Like, listen, the OC move in itself, like basically the 2 moves are the opposite moves, aren't they? One is like a great player, obviously on his way down, and he's trying to see what mileage he's got left in Shox. And then one is an up-and-coming player who maybe one day could be a great player, has a trajectory, but just hasn't done it at the Team Liquid level. He's done it at a slightly lower level, and he hasn't the same expectations. So, like, both moves make sense in isolation. My problem is just this. When you look at the overall roster, it's like, is this roster actually that much better than the one they just had? I don't really know. Like, I thought the last roster they had looked fine on paper. It just didn't fundamentally work in the server. And a lot of the roles were a bit sort of like messed up and people were kind of too close to like, well, I'll do the IGL now. Well, I'll do the IGL now. Well, what about this one? Can I play this? Like, there was too much of that. So I look at this lineup and I think it's a kind of a similar scenario. So even though I think actually it's fine, like there's nothing wrong with it. Like, I don't think any of these players are bad. Like, I would have been a lot more critical if that rumor that Vinny was going to join it happened. Like, I think that would have been that made less sense to me. These are good players. These are players worth taking a go. I just look at it, and what I think to myself is this. I think to myself, which of the three is it that need to be worried? Is it Team Liquid, Elige, or NAF? Because it's like, bro, this is what I don't get. You're Team Liquid. You're one of the most successful orgs of the last 10 years. Elige is literally the #1 NA player. It's not even a debate. Like, I'm pretty sure even the other candidates would just admit it at this point. He's overwhelmed them. And then NAF is just considered, everyone likes him. He's just a really amazing player. How can that org and those 2-star players not attract better than this? Like, am I missing something? Like, mate, when I see Valdez going to fucking EG, that sounds like EG's got a better pull. Fucking EG. The org's a joke. They don't even have any real, like, fucking veteran legends in the team. There's not even a player to draw you to the team. Like, I can't comprehend how these two teams are so off. Like, to me, the logic should be Team Liquid should have had first pick of everyone. They should have a banging lineup. They should basically be in the position that we're hearing about, like the G2s, the Vitalities, the Phases, where it's like we're making the upgrade. That's an obvious upgrade on paper and takes us potentially to the top. This Team Liquid squad I look at now, it's like, isn't this just again like, you know, the 7th best team in the world? Is this really going to win events? I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not vibing with it winning events, but I do have a couple of thoughts, and then I'm going to segue into a topic we haven't really talked a lot about. But, I mean, look, OC for me is ready for tier 1 AWPing, especially, by the way, I think that, you know, if you go and you look at the current top 10 teams and you look at their kind of like the AWPing personnel that's going at the top level, I mean, first of all, you've got the big two who are hybrid AWPers. You've got Shiro, obviously. But then once you start going down the list, you know, Cadian is in the top 5.
You get pretty shallow, don't you? It's not that many big names, is there?
Yeah, Cadian's in the top 5. We've all talked about James at Virtus Pro and how we're not particularly sold with him. Astralis think they don't even need a fucking AWPer. So actually, when you start, you know, one of the things we haven't talked a lot about is how right now, with the current lay of the land, actually, we're entering a very interesting phase of the meta where we're sort of going to see what having a top tier reliable AWPer is actually worth in these systems and teams. And I think in that sense, if OC's as good as I think he is, and I've said for a while now he's been ready for tier 1, it's embarrassing watching him in tier 2, frankly. He just shits on everyone. He's got that swagger. He clearly doesn't respect the opponents he's playing at that level.
It's Smoothie, right?
Yeah, exactly. He but you know, with Smoothie, obviously, you've got a bunch of personality problems. Well, I mean, he's, to be fair to the Rat King, all hail the Rat King. He has, I'm sure he's solved all of those issues now, and he's doing great at Fnatic. But historically, he's had those issues. I've never heard anything like that about OC. Seems to have his head switched on, and I'm sure we'll relish the opportunity. Put it this way. With Nitro, Elige, NAF, and OC, I think that's a group of players that can all get along, and I don't think there'll be any problems, you know, personality-wise. And so we throw the Gallic grenade into the fucking mix. I seriously think this is like a 1-year max appointment, not because I don't think Shox has actually played really well his last couple of tournaments. You know, he's never going to be what he was. Which veteran is, but it's the personality clash I worry about, frankly. But I don't think he's going to take too kindly to being told what to do. He's never like that.
Oh, no.
He likes to play the Shox way, and the only person who understands the Shox way 100% is Shox.
Dude, the worst thing about this is, aside from people who watch our show, I genuinely think the other players in the pro scene don't get this, you know. Basically, it's only the French players who know why Shox was called the princess. Because the joke of it is, because he is the princess, he never has to have an outburst. You will never see what it is that makes him the princess, because the premise is everyone the whole time has been catering to him. Dude, the craziest thing of all is, they effectively catered to him on some level in Vitality when he was nowhere close to the star player and wasn't even indispensable. It's just... my quote, I had the line years ago about Shocks, where I was talking about at the time the fact he could always come back to be the best player. But I just said, this is Shocks' world and we live in it. That is just what it's like if you... But the problem, I think, is this, is Shocks himself doesn't know this, Richard. He's spent his whole life in the bubble of the French community, where essentially it was always understood, you are a genius and we will have to treat you differently. Yes, you are like our Dennis Rodman or something. You can kind of do other things the others can't. I don't think he gets this. Not only is he going to a team, which, by the way, are not prepared for any of that, but even worse, that won't fly in this team. Like that, this isn't the team where you're going to get the fuck around. Like, I know he's not a rock star anymore in that sense, but I mean, like, there can't even be, hence what we've been alluded to with the elections, there can't even be like disputes and like people arguing over roles. Like, that is going to rub certain people really badly. So yeah, that's the problem. That's why I say the last roster on paper made sense. If you could like remove, say it was like League of Legends and technically there's no voice comms in the game or whatever, like, yeah, that roster would have been fine. But again, you looked at it and you were like, wait a minute, how is like the ego of Fallen going to work with Elige? And then how is like fucking this guy Stewie going to be an IGL or not? But like, you could already see the conflicts before. Yeah. So I see some of those again in this team, to be fair. I don't think they're resolved. And I actually think certain ways they built the team don't really make sense to me. So an obvious example would be, it's the same what I said about Nitro in the past one. It's like, if we're going to put these pieces together, why are we just getting like an old IGL from Valorant? Why is that the piece that completes the team? I know the answer. He is Nitro, and you know, we all get all the fucking reasons. But like, I think that to me, that's more of a wrestling storyline. It's like Nitro's back. Oh my God, Captain America! Like, it's not actually justified though. So that's why I say I just don't get what the philosophy is behind the team. Is this really just like this is all that's available? We've got the best players we can play Football Manager. Fair enough if so. But if you, to me again, I think of Team Liquid like I do FaZe Clan, mate. I'm supposed to be putting out championship rosters all the time. That is my goal. If I'm not, why am I really in CS? Is my philosophy. And by the way, on the opening point, I think you're completely right. But the reason why is also a very obvious one. There's two. And unfortunately, they're going to kill us all. One is Kenny S and Guardian fell off. And unfortunately, they were people who would have had permanent jobs as a tier 1 AWPer as long as they wanted to play because they were just mustard. Everyone knows how good they were. So unfortunately, you're not going to just replace a guy like that. Like, you're not going to, even if someone's as skilled as Kenny S, they're not going to be Kenny S, are they? With all the experience, tenure, all. And then the other angle is it's the online era. The online era fucked us all because as teams like Mouse and Fnatic can show you, you couldn't just sit back and wait for lands. But at the same time, if you chopped and changed and you got in a bunch of young players to be good online, you go to the LAN and then they're all shit in the bed. So it's like, unfortunately, everyone was damned if you do, damned if you don't on that one. So I will say it, with all roster discussions in this online era, put a slight asterisk that it's way harder to make the moves than it was when we were on LAN.
Mm. So the other topic I wanted to talk about with this Team Liquid LAN, because we've sort of avoided it for until now, is Grim. Obviously, Grim is out. They confirmed that. We'll get to where his next home might be in a moment.
Did you see that quote he said in that interview, though?
Yeah, which I read the interview. Which
he had a quote where effectively he said, I think it was HLTV or something. Yeah, effectively said, like, in my next team, I'll make sure I'm comfortable. By the way, he basically just hinted at what everyone must have known the whole time, which is they definitely didn't give him his fucking resources in that team, did they?
No, but this is the thing. So obviously, I've referenced it before. I still urge anyone who hasn't watched it yet, if you want to get a better idea just about Liquid, there's that Elige interview I did. When, you know, we talked a little bit about it, and Elige was a little bit disparaging about Grim and his, you know, mind for the game. Stewie was openly wrecking this guy in interviews. And by the way, I don't necessarily have a problem with it because it was clearly a dead team anyway. It would have been poor form if, hey, we're going to keep going to events and I'm wrecking you, you know, in public every opportunity I get. But it was just so clear to me the whole time that, no, these guys actually didn't rate him. They got him. It wasn't like they wanted him. They brought him in. They never rated him. They never gave him what he needed. They just told him what to do, how to play. And when he wasn't as quick on the uptake as they might want, or didn't have the same ideas that they didn't like it. And, you know, this is an issue, by the way. Like, you'll see this in a lot of scenes, none more so than NA. It's a lot like wrestling. If anyone knows anything about wrestling, this idea that you've got to pay your dues, kiss the ring, take your lumps, and basically you come into a match and it doesn't matter how popular you are, your tenure dictates what you get to do. And so you'll have to say to the other seasoned professional, how do you want to play the match? And they'll go, we'll do this, and then I'll do my finisher and do it. You know, and Grim, every story he's told, plus everything Stewie has said, plus everything Ali said, just points to the fact they just treated him like the perennial fucking understudy.
He was just a jobber, wasn't he? Who just got beat up by Hulk Hogan or whatever.
you can't get on our level, fuck you. And so I feel really sorry for him. If you read between the lines, there's a lesson for the Grim story because it shows what a poison chalice it can be to get picked up by tier 1 if the people aren't really committed to developing your talent. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, because I know you'll have seen similar NA players down the years.
Like, listen, there's a degree to which that's always exists. So I've always pointed out the example of NIP in CSGO just because it's a touch that people in CSGO will know because they were the most outrageous example of where they kept the core 4 and they just rotated in a 5th. Essentially, someone just got to play the role of like Fiflaren stand-in for 6 months to a year each time, and then they kept kicking them and then bringing the next one in. Right? That's the most extreme version of it, but people have to realize that is basically the old school way that Counterstrike teams were made because the players themselves made it. And so what happens is you don't tend to have just one player. Like, it's not just the IGL decides the players. It's more like the players with the most status. So let's say often the star player in the IGL, they will be the ones who will be like, right, we get X, Y, and Z. It's like, I'll think you say about the wrestling analogy. If you have like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage, they're obviously getting the title shots in the big match. But the premise then becomes, but we've got to have a show, so let's round out the show. And then what happens is they really do, because they're players, remember, they're not coaches. They haven't got like a holistic view of the game. Their logic really goes, just recruit all the best players. Because remember, they all believe that whack shit that, look, I don't want to call people out, but my mate Moses does repeat this. So everyone in the industry says it. They go, in the modern day, Thorin, every pro has to be able to play every role, only in a slight context and on occasion, for fuck's sake. What you mean is if I'm the entry and you decide to like test both sides of the map and you have a timing to go into the other side, obviously you don't wait for me to run all the way through spawn, do you? We get that, but that doesn't mean suddenly that Apex is the lurker. He isn't, is he? It's just that this is the one round you didn't go to his site. So in that scenario, right, people have taken that premise of like, the good player should be able to play every role. By the way, spoiler, the great players are utterly delusional. People like Nico believe they could be every role in the game. I'm sure Shox does. Like, they actually are completely delusional, by the way. There's no universe they'd ever survive playing like a Zipnik's role for fucking 1 month. Never mind 5 years. But because of that, that's how they made their teams, especially back in the day. And the reason I bring this up is it doesn't seem like it's as common now in Europe, because in Europe, it does seem like the coaches decide the teams, and we're getting more of like a proper sports team building approach. In NA, you see it with this lineup, you see it with the EG lineup. These are just lineups where they've gotten the best players they can find, and they're just going to figure out after the fact where people fit and who goes where. Even though they're going to run into the same problem here, Richard, which is they're going to have a scenario where someone is going to eat a plate of shit. So I'm guessing in EG it'll be Valde. I'm guessing in this team it was Grim. There's always going to be someone who will just eat a plate of shit. And the worst part of it is half the other players in the team don't really understand they're making that person do that. And the worst part is, as you saw with Grim, they then don't even give you any sort of credit for doing a decent job of it. Like, listen, if people think Grim is shit, I don't know on what level you could think that. Like, he looked like he was okay. He looked like he was fine. He was never the guy costing them games for my money. So the idea people like Elish can't go, look, I get you didn't get your spots, but you didn't have a brutal job. The idea they're just like, he's just not that good, is he? It's like, what are you on about, mate? No, I don't think you get the game. So unfortunately, I think that trend in NA particularly will continue. And I think, unfortunately, the fact that the market's been squeezed down means that both of those orgs look like they just turned and just catered to the star player. It looks like, unfortunately, NA is a light years away from where we are with the whole like, Stars Vitality thing, where you can bring pieces in and move them out and you can take like a veteran and bench them. Like, I don't feel like that seems to exist in NA.
Yeah, and I'll add towards the end of his time in Liquid, which again, I don't know how much you want to, I won't judge Grim on what happens at the end of a team when your IGL is literally saying like you shit essentially. But I mean, like if you look at his stats, he did struggle a little bit against the very top teams. You know, like when they. But actually, that wasn't even a particularly bad one. I was going to say when they lost to Nip, but I mean, he looked lost when they played Navi and had a real both times. And you know, look, at the end of the day, I'm not saying he's like a solid tier 1 stalwart who's been done dirty by the lineup, but equally, I don't think he ever got the respect he deserves as a young prospect that's been brought into your team to do a job. So yeah, it was very. I was a little bit disheartened because it's history repeating itself. We've seen this time and time again where old veterans, basically, I don't want to use the buzzword, but gatekeep, I suppose, is accurate, and sort of don't develop the young talent to the same degree that they really should, and they recycle jobs for the boys. I mean, real talk. Is it better to bring in a veteran like Shocks over not developing a talent like Grim? I mean, that's a fundamentally philosophical question, right?
Yeah, the problem, that's why, again, if you notice, I boil it down to like essentially who is playing the role of the GM and what are they conceiving of as their like principles they're building the team around. Because yeah, what you say there, by the way, I noticed this kept happening with FaZe Clan, because FaZe Clan, if you notice, had all these veteran players minus Brokey, basically. And if you notice, right, a lot of people, Yanko's an example of it, they were telling me, look, their problem is it doesn't matter how good the players are. They're all old players. You've got to have like, fresh blood and a young player. Like, look, I agree, but it depends what team you're building. The point is, and this is where I think FaZe Clan ran into the brick wall. If you think your team is 95% the best team and it's just that one last player going to make you the best, well, then if a veteran does it, then you bring the veteran. Of course you do. If you're a team where, and this might be where Team Liquid is, quite frankly, you need a lot more than even just these roster moves probably to get to the top. You need people to develop as players. Then logically, you have to bring in someone like OC and hope he like continues that form on LAN and gets better even and becomes like a dominant. But you have to do that because eventually one day there has to be enough firepower for you to do what you want to do. So like, that's why I don't think there's a hard and fast rule on that. I think sometimes it is the right team to bring in a veteran. I think RPK showed you that with his last sort of year and a half in Vitality.
Absolutely.
Obviously, iTest, no one would recruit this guy. But if you knew what he could do in your team, there's a reason why his teammates rave about him. By the way, that isn't just because he's like a legendary player. Like the stuff they're saying, as far as I can tell, I even went and asked for some examples from some of those guys. Tell me like in a map to look at. And when I went and looked, they were right. There was stuff he was doing that clearly was just for the team or like taking a shit spot or whatever. Like that. Yeah, I think it just depends. It depends how close you are to the championship, basically. Because if you notice a trend in general, I'm really out on in CS is I'm just kind of done with it. Like I've seen too many games, boys. I don't want to watch teams that are just 6 out of 10 or a 7 out of 10. I don't want to be like, well, no, the Thorin, we don't have to kick that player as well because he's all right. All right ain't good enough for the top 10 in the world, mate. If I'm in the top 10, unless I'm literally at number 10 with a load of inexperienced players, I should be trying to go for number 1. Like, it's within my wheelhouse. I'm not that far away. So why would you just settle? I mean, anyone who's a sports fan should know this. Who gives a fuck if the team finishes 4th in the Premier League? If we finished 4th, we probably could have won it. Therefore, really, you're disappointed we finished 4th, aren't we? They're never going, awesome. Like, I was a Liverpool fan. Do you think I was going, well, 2nd and 3rd's pretty good? What's that fuck? I was like, get the extra player. What's he doing over there?
Yeah.
And as usual, it's a shame I didn't grow up watching American football. I had my own version. I actually had my own version of a fucking a mega coach who's a cheating cunt who keeps cheating us all the time. And I'm sat there going, sound, so he wins in the game and cheats us great. I'll just keep watching this, shall I?
I mean, Ferguson and Belichick should fucking.
Oh, they're unreal. They're just not the same person, aren't they? They should get together and do a fucking one-on-one interview or something.
That'd be so funny. Oh, man. But you gotta love them. You gotta admire them.
Yes.
You can hate them too, but holy shit.
Oh, the sad thing is, let's be real. They're like people like Dennis Rodman. When you watch them, you go, "Oh, fuck this guy. Wish he was on my team."
Yeah, I know.
You know what I mean? Like, like Ferguson coming to Liverpool, I'd be loving him, wouldn't I? Be like, listen, it's in the game, Richard. Playing with the refs' minds and that. Whereas otherwise, I was like, it's fucking bullshit, Fergie time.
I'll give you a fucking classical bit of like how psychology can sort of I don't know what the term is because I'm not a psychology student, but when you see who you would be if you were doing that job, that person, right, and you hate them, right. So for me, when I used to play football, I was never good enough. I was never going to county trials or nothing like that. But I was good enough to play for the school team, good enough to play at college level. But people were like, he's just not got enough finesse. He's not good with the ball. And eventually I focused on rugby and whatnot. Now, I used to be a fucking destroyer in midfield. I used to fucking be there, never shirk a challenge. Don't give a fuck, break both my legs. If I break one of yours, that's fine. We'll both go off. Just insane will to win. Know I'm shit. Win the ball. Give it to someone who can play. Give it to our best players. Give it to the ones who are having them county trials. The ones who can score the worldies. The ones who are going to go and get professional contracts. That was what I did. And when I was growing up, I was watching Roy Keane. I used to fucking hate Roy Keane.
Same. Yeah.
I used to fucking hate him with a passion. I wanted to be Roy Keane, but I hated Roy Keane. How the fuck does that work?
There is some sort of phenomenon, isn't there?
Yeah. The day he retired, I was like, the great footballer. But for every day he played, I despised him. But yeah, I see that shit all the fucking time, mate. I see it all the time. Complexity coming to the story now, because Grim is obviously out there in free agency land, and Extra Salt They've got a team still. They've done pretty good in that tier 2 of NA. I would even go as far as to say, I think because of how NA is now, calling them tier 2 in NA is a bit derisory. They are tier 1 NA, really.
I'm like the 4th best NA team or something.
Yeah, it's like dead man's shoes, but whatever the fuck, they're still your shoes, at the end of the day. And I actually, don't, I think their lineup has got a lot of promise on it because obviously, my man Floppy's on there now. Again, he's a player that circumstances dealt really rough cards to. I've watched a lot of Fang. I think he's going to be, OC's gone to Liquid now. So Fang's probably the next guy you're looking at to develop into a tier 1 NA talent. He's really good. I watched a lot of his games. Still needs to work on some stuff. Sure, he's a raw talent, but he's saying all the right things. I mean, like I saw an interview with Fang and he's going, I want to be one of the best players in the world. Like, fuck it. I'm not setting my bar any lower than that. And it's like, good, don't. So Complexity might be signing essentially the extra salt lineup, and it's going to be JT, Fang, Floppy Jr., and Grim slots in because OC obviously leaves and goes to Liquid, so it's sort of a swap. So if Complexity do pick that team up, it's a budget team, but it's a budget team with promise, isn't it?
Yeah, like put it this way, assuming it's going to be cheap, like I'm guessing that can't be that expensive. There's no way they're getting massive salaries and extra salt, etc. If people don't know, like actually, this is why, by the way, fans they're not just feckless; they're almost like obnoxious to the extent you want them to not get what they want. So you almost want the scene to fail because the fans deserve it, right? All those people on Reddit, Richard, nearly all of them are American. All of them say all that good shit. Oh, I like underdogs and upsets. Oh, I like to develop NA talent. Like, they all say all that. They should be the biggest Extra Salt fans of all time, mate. They should have been like a cult following, like they should low key be like nearing the Team Liquid, like Cloud9 levels now, especially with all these foreign fucking players coming in Team Liquid Cloud9. But no one gives a flying fuck about them. So the sad thing is, like, I actually do think of all the teams you could pick up. The other rumor was maybe they get a CIS team. These are the two best squads. There's three things you wanted. You either wanted this team. Let's be real. There's no other NA talents you would want. This is the one with the talents, or you wanted a CIS squad or a Brazilian team. Those are the ways you min-max right now with Counterstrike. You don't have to pay too much, but it's totally justified. They can't make much elsewhere. You can actually hopefully market to a fan base. And let's be real, all these teams have an outside chance of actually doing some stuff. Like, they're not, especially if we play online, mate. If we have any more online teams, these teams can, like, mate, Extra Salt can win if it's in NA, of course.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it wasn't Complexity's first choice.
Of course not.
And it based on what Complexity could have been, should have been. Like, mate, again, I'll repeat this for the millionth time.
Yes.
If anyone's out there, content creators, people that actually want to make worthwhile content, somebody do a documentary on the building and the subsequent collapse of the fucking juggernaut. Do it. It's such a compelling story. That team could have been still talked about now, especially now. Could have been right.
There's a world in which, I mean, we've already reported this on the show. There's a world in which the trio that came from Astralis and has gone to Vitality go to Complexity. Yeah. Complexity keeps playing FM Config, and they're the ones who have a better version of Astralis. They're the ones right now who would like potentially going to go to number one in the world. Like, that was really on the table. I will say some of the figures I was in were outrageous. Like, I understand why they didn't do it. Like, if you notice, they're going a totally different business angle now. But that's what's sad. Yeah, I agree. The problem is this could have been one of the sickest storylines ever, couldn't it? Be the ultimate double down.
And just in that regard, and we'll talk about pricing in a second. I am a little bit confused about what the long-term goal for Complexity is now, because listen, if you want to keep your hand in while times are quiet and things are on a downturn, and you're going to develop some NA talent and see where it goes, this is exactly the scenario Jason Lake was in all his career, and he hated it. And he finally got that deal with the Cowboys, got that money, and was able to actually buy the players he wanted. Spend the money he wanted to build a team. Developing talent. I know it's like, it's the passion of any great coach, obviously, and any great GM. To take somebody who's a 6 or a 7, turn them into an 8 or a 9, or God forbid you're good enough to turn them into a 10. The sense of pride you have in that
mega.
As a coach.
You know this. It's why me and you have helped so many people in the esports industry.
Yeah.
I always tell people, I don't believe in altruism. I don't do it for them, by the way. I do it for myself because it actually feels amazing when they become sick. Like, you think when Maui Snake gets announced for a Blast event, I'm not like, fuck. I'm so glad I actually did all that shit. It's fucking sick. It's my kid. I get a sense of pride, don't I?
Yeah, exactly. That's why I always say, all the journalists that I help train up, they're like my esports children, right? You stand back, you see Jacob Wolf doing fucking ESPN or whatever, and you're the guy who, because he came on a trash talk podcast one time, you got talking to him, and then you gave him a role at Heaven Media, and then you go on to basically be the best thing over at ESPN. Maybe bar one or two names. It's like, yeah, I'm obviously I would never take any credit for that, but sometimes people just need that little opportunity, and obviously you feel great about that. And so I've done sports coaching, like on the side. I've done coaching in rugby, done coaching in football. And it's great when you see somebody get a concept and apply it and look good. The problem you've got, unfortunately, is the idea of doing it to 3 people in the same team. That's a pipe dream. That's a pipe dream. You take one project who really has all the foundations, and then you build him up as tall as he can go. That's what you do. And my worry is, I think Jason Lake's going to find himself frustrated again with what complexity is, because when you're the Dallas Cowboys of CS, you need to be spending that money. You need to spend Cowboys money, and they don't have like a StarCraft team like they used to, and they're not in the League of Legends, and they're not in the Call of Duty League, and they're not in any of these franchises. CS is the flagship team.
It's the game, yeah.
Yeah, so for me, listen, I'm not saying don't pick these guys up. Please do, because we'll get to the next point as to why in a second. But I just think you've got to be disappointed when you think about what you could have had.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, not only literally the case of the Danish one would obviously have been an incredibly enticing project. And imagine, by the way, how you could have marketed that team. That would have been fucking very interesting team.
Yes.
But even would have even had holdovers, your star players from the previous team. You could have done amazing things with that. The other part to me, though, is I also do get the vibe, and this is speculation here, mixed with a little bit of insider info. My other vibe is this. This isn't just a business decision where it's like, as you say, it's not like someone on top was like, right, no more money for Counterstrike, it's done, buy a budget. No, the sad thing is, and I'm just going to say this straight up, Config and Blame F, congratulations, you're responsible for this. You actually are. Because not only did you just basically play out a fucking enormous contract that, by the way, you didn't deserve. I know that sounds outrageous. How dare you? No, what I mean is if you know how much over the odds they were paid, basically, relative to how good they were and what other teams would have played, the joke is Jason Lake bid against himself because he just wanted those players so much. But he gave them baller fucking contracts.
He did.
Then you're in a team where, as far as I know, generally you were supported for a few years. Yes, there was a lot of fuckery with people in and out of the lineup and the standard. We all know all that doesn't live in Europe, or do people want to go in America? We know all the circumstances. But my problem is this. Config and Blame F, they treated it at the end like it was just business. And I'll tell you what, anytime you ever tell someone you had any personal relationship with, just business, bro, you're always a dickhead in that scenario, by the way. Because why would you need to say it's business? Surely it's just a business. No, you're saying it's business because it explicitly implies you had a personal relationship as well, and the other person probably assumed the personal relationship took precedence. So I personally think, speculation here, that people like Jason Lake saw Config essentially say, by the way, mate, I'm off to Astralis, and you know what? I'm not even going to let you match or bid. I'm just off. See ya. Thanks for the money. Anyway, you can start at scratch again. I'm off. I think he saw that and he was like, you know what? That's killed my love for CS at the moment. Like I can't be in the game at the moment. Like I'm not going to get, because let's be real, you're not going to replace them tomorrow unless you got that enormous Astralis deal. So why if we're going to start over, fuck it, yeah, scrub the deck. Go with a cheap team, and then you know what? If they show promise, maybe we invest. Maybe we do it later. And I find that sad because, as I've said in the past, I had complexity in my shortlist with FaZe Clan, G2. They're the teams that I could trust actually will spend money, will try and go for the top. Remember, as much as people might want to look at the results and go, but they didn't, Thorin. What are you talking about? They bought JKS. They brought fucking Cold Zero in. They actually genuinely did try to make this the best team they could. It just didn't work out. And so, unfortunately, I actually feel a bit bummed out that like some people I do consider legit in the business, it feels like they've been burned a little bit. Not entirely, like as I say, if it had just been business, that is how you do business. I've done my contract, I'm off, okay. But that wasn't the vibe that I think they had when they made that project. And so for me, they were on a journey together. And I think in a way it's kind of sad that, as far as I can tell, I don't know if Complexity will ever be a big player in the game again. There might just be just an okay org, right?
Now, well, I'll add to that, right? Now, I haven't talked to Jason in a few months. He's a family man, busy as fuck. But so my read on it, because knowing him from the past and having talked about him with this, the one thing he always hated, and not hated, the thing that used to make him despondent, it wasn't hate, it was despondency, would be he would give these players what he considered everything. I think there was almost an element, by the way, as well, of like contrition. He had some contentious relationships in the past. He himself had acknowledged some of his behaviour had not been great.
Yeah.
And he not treated people the way
people ever see on Twitter, Fraud never stops going on about it. It's basically what Fraud alludes to. They had a few sort of like fractious relationships at times.
Dude, I was going through my super old content, recently, because I'm trying to curate it. In a place where it's not going to get fucking zapped. And I was listening to a Jason Lake podcast I did way back when, where he's very, very candid. And trust me, he's not happy about any of that stuff. He never denied it. He never denied it. He always just said, like, listen, that was a fucked up time for everybody. It was very early on in esports. It's not an excuse. He's made himself a better man and a better manager and a better esports contributor because of that journey he went on. And by the way, spoiler, I hate to tell people this because I know a lot of you fucking new school Zoomers who weren't around. Dude, we only had fucked up people at the start of esports because you had to be fucked up to want to try and make competitive video games as big as mainstream sports. You had to be mentally ill to fucking do that. So obviously, guess what happened? Mentally ill people gravitated to what? That sounds like a fucking... I would love to be Sisyphus. Like, nobody wants to do that. So we did have a lot of people who had problems or had failed in other businesses and stuff like that. I'll admit I'm one of them. I was a guy who graduated, thought I could go back to the northeast of fucking England and be a fucking, journalist. People go, no, Richard, you will have to come to London. I'm like, fuck you, fucking Londoners. I don't want to live in that shithole. I'll be fine up north, actually. Of course, no opportunities. I watched people come up from London, get those BBC, local radio, local reporter jobs. All Londoners reporting about Middlesbrough, Newcastle, whatever the fuck. So I was like, okay, esports it is. Gaming it is. I try to be a games journalist, which, by the way, that should tell you what the caliber of games journalists is. There I was, not able to do what I really wanted to do and came into that. And then I found esports as a result of it. So I make no bones about it. It was sort of my feelings or hubris or whatever you want to call it that led me to this. And it was a similar journey for a lot of people. Now, Jason Lake's not like me. He's fucking god-tier GM, achieved so much. But I know it still cuts him deep when he doesn't feel players he showed loyalty to reciprocate, right? Yeah. And I think he feels a little bit of that here. And, when I saw Messi also come in and join, again, I got nothing against Graham, But that makes me suspect Jason's looking at the exit and thinking, I'll monitor him. I don't want to be in the trenches no more. I can't keep talking to these players. And I'll tell you another thing that I heard behind the scenes. I think I've said it on this podcast before, so who gives a fuck? Config already had a verbal... Config got fucking tapped up by Astralis.
I heard the same thing, yeah.
Way back when. And the entire... let's just be generous and say the last 6 months of his complexity career, he knew he was already out the door and joining Astralis.
That's why I say I think it left a bad taste in the mouth of the call people. That's why I explicitly pointed out, it might have got lost on all people, that they didn't even let the match. The premise was, look, I'm off, and there's nothing you can do that'll make me stay. In fact, I'm not even going to have the conversation. Yeah. Thanks for all the money. I'm off. Which, listen, that's not, if we are being purely business reliant, that's fine. But it is a bit fucked up, as you say, if someone's tried to create a different kind of culture, and the premise is, we're all on a journey, and we're all going for something. And in fact, we're all reclaiming our careers together, Rich. Like, Config, you used to be a superstar player, but no one wants you now. I'm going to bring you in as my star player. I'm going to build you up again. If after that, the guy just goes, you know what, actually, I don't believe in this body, essentially explicitly, I'm telling you that. And even worse, I'm just going to the most popular team in Denmark. They haven't even got a mega team for me, mate. Fuck you. Not really fuck you, but that's how I'd feel if I was just Lake.
Yeah, well, yeah. And so the other aspect to this is, which is what we'll talk about, is obviously they were meant to be getting Copenhagen Flames. That was the report. And again, because we always tell you it straight on this podcast, because we all get told stuff. I'm going to just tell you legit. The only reason it ain't Copenhagen Flames players completely priced themselves out of it. If you ever want an example of a little bit of success, fucking go into players' heads and suddenly they're making salary demands that are just so ridiculous, proportionate to what they've done, who they are, where they're going to go. That basically the complexity deal was a slam dunk.
Oh, for sure, yeah. For both sides, yeah.
They'd had a talk, they'd had another talk. It's about cash. People want it, and not the Copenhagen Flames org, by the way, who wanted to flip this thing.
Yes.
They wanted. So listen, I'll read you this.
MIBR, the players just without any even, by the way, leverage, just wanted more money.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, so I've got this. Where is it? Hang on. Let me just find this. This thing that Hooks.
Because people don't know, by the way, the reason it can't be the org, unless they're lying, is the org, as far as I remember, not only said the price that the team cost, but they even sort of implied you could buy them individually, didn't they? Didn't they sort of say like all options are available, basically? It's not like they were like you have to only buy all. Like they were sort of like.
He specifically said we are selling this, not we are selling it to Complexity, or we are selling it to if we get this. We are selling it. They're gone. So. I'll read you this. There was when it was announced that the Copenhagen Flames team was staying at Copenhagen Flames, Hooksy, their IGL, said, "We might not get the big bucks or the league spots." Pretty bad, really. But we get a feeling of security and room to develop that no big organization can provide. That's what he said. So, I mean, like, how much more explicit? You may as well have just said, like, well, it was a money thing. We're not getting the big bucks here at Copenhagen Flames. Here's also the reality. I hate to say this. You're a flash in the pan team that has had no sustainable, appreciable success. You were the surprise component at the major.
Oh, by the way, this is one thing I hate in esports. This is where the wrestling side actually ruins esports. This happened in League of Legends, Richard. In 2017 at Worlds, a team from Europe who was just like a good team, they weren't even the best team from Europe, called Misfits with Alfari, etc. They went to Worlds and they took SK Telecom with Faker, who were the reigning champions. They took them to 5 games. You know the only problem, of course? They didn't win.
Yeah.
So people acted, Richard, like they'd won. People talk like, how could you break the team up? And like, it was a legendary line. It's like, they didn't even do. They're literally famous for almost doing something. What are you? We've got Mad Day Boys. So the same thing. Look, my heart goes out to Copenhagen Flames. I thought they should have been in the PGL Stockholm playoffs, but they didn't win the game. At the end of the day, their best thing they ever did was almost getting to the top 8, but not getting the top 8. So again, like, if you're getting arrogance and hubris from that, it's like, I don't think life's for you, mate. Like, you got to actually do some shit. Like, you can't be talking a big game like, yeah, I might fuck around in the next major and almost make top 8. Like, who gives a shit? Who gives a shit? Like, you're right. It's in isolation, it's an enormous accomplishment. In the macro sense, it's insignificant. And it's essentially will be forgotten. Mate, people forget Quantum Beltor Fire made top 8 in a major, and that was top 8. That was years ago, though. So in a few years, people remember this.
Had to get broke apart. And I'll just remind people this, that while we're talking about the Liquid team, because it all ties together, Liquid talked to Nikodos and Roy and basically said, do you want to be the 2 guys that come and join Liquid? And apparently they were like, no, we want to stay together. They were thinking they were going to go to Complexity.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
See, that would be a sexy as fuck move. Imagine Roy on Team Liquid. That guy looks like a fucking mega soldier to have. I'd love that.
Yeah, but you also got to remember, like, and I know we shouldn't keep bringing up age in CS because it doesn't really seem to pass. But he's 28.
Yeah, but it's a bit like
27.
Because they sort of got going later in their career. Here's the premise I feel like.
Well,
I saw this.
Like Stuart Pearson, Ian Wright.
No, I saw this happen in MMA. The same thing happened in MMA, right? People used to always go, I mean, look, this is before the obvious reason they're all on HGH and steroids. I wonder why Tom Brady's so good at 44. Exactly. Get the fuck out. Get out my face if you actually believe that's naturally your morons. But anyway, if we're ignoring the technological...
I actually believe that about Tom Brady, but I'm a Tom Brady fan.
Except here's the joke. The reason why nobody will ever have an accurate take on Tom Brady and the Buccaneers is because they do 2 things, Richard. Either he's the best in every game or he's dog shit. It's neither, you morons. Both seasons he did the same thing. Half the season he's really good, half he's not as good because he's a 44-year-old man. He's fucking 44 years old. The only reason, and he even admits it himself, mate, that it's fine to continue playing in the NFL is you can't, like, wreck the quarterback all the time. He even says it himself. It's a soft thing. So anyway, the point I was making was, right, this happened in MMA where basically, aside from, like, steroids continue people like Vitor Beltor's career. Like the real reason why certain people were able to be like 40 years old and be a champion is because sometimes they only got into MMA when they were like 30 years old after a career in some other thing, like
so
collegiate wrestling or exactly. So they didn't have the wear and tear on them. Like if you're a wrestler, look, you might physically have had to do a lot of stuff, but no one's punching you in your face. Like you're not getting knocked out and having your, like the fucking tolerance to get hit go down and stuff. So basically, I do kind of low key think after watching the careers of like Valde, because if you remember, he was like 24, 25 when he got in. Roy now, a couple of them, Jax. Like it almost feels like, even though I'm sure age-wise it still hits you the same way, I think the fact that they're not burned out from like 8 years of being a pro since they're 15 means they actually still have like more wear on the tires, as it were.
Yeah, I don't know, because I think, honestly, I think the Flash, it might be an ember now. I don't think that this team is gonna do shit.
As a team, they're not, mate. That's why the sad thing is, Liquid nailed it. You take the 2 pieces that looked good. Roy's obvious, especially when you find out that he apparently has this amazing attitude and was willing to make space for other people in the past. And then Nikodos just looked like the best player, didn't he? Like so, like logically, you take those 2 players and you say to the others, like every other fucking up and coming team in history, sorry, that was actually the team. Those 2 players. You're welcome to go elsewhere and try and build back up again with a new set of players like them. Spoiler if you do, we'll just take the next 2 players. Like they're just back in the cycle, aren't they? We all know that. That's as old as time in Counterstrike.
But it's the thing, right? Because I know this might not have gone on your radar because, as you say, you're a guy who's like, you don't want to watch 6 out of 10 Counter-Strike. Me, I've got something wrong with my brain, and as anyone who watches the show probably attest to, you'll find me in late night chats with 2,000 people watching some dog shit, like regional Chinese championship. I've always just enjoyed watching it. But anyway, do you know where Copenhagen Flames finished in the ESEA Premier season?
No, but I'm going to guess, because I did hear like rumblings from a bunch of people that apparently as soon as they got back from the major, they're just getting banged out everywhere. So I'm going to guess they did terribly, right?
Not terrible, but I mean, considering these guys are pricing themselves out of a complexity move, I want you to win that league. I want you to win Premier.
Did they come 5th to 6th or 5th to 8th or something?
You've nailed it.
There we go. I didn't look it up. I'm just guessing. They can't. Like, you obviously should be winning if you're going to be asking for that sort of money. Yeah.
Let me tell you who that puts them level with. That puts them level with the team 1 win. A Russian team
from Brazil, a less well-known team. Yeah, no, 1 win, okay.
One win with which, by the way, that
ever heard of on this team?
You might, if you follow my shit, they got a player called Deco who's fucking sick.
Never heard of him.
He's good. He's really, really good. Like, needs to be on an entropic, or maybe that's a bit too high up. But watch out for him. He's straight fire. They finished below Blink from Albania, which, by the way, that's got the Swiss player Rigon, who I know you remember on. Gamer Legion, I know you know them. They finished above them with 0 plays for them now, and
the Slovakian player, yeah,
and the Swedish guy Rusty, you might have heard of. Now, Entropic were second, probably not a surprise. I don't need to tell you the players that play on that roster, and it was Sprout that won it out. And obviously, the Sprout team now, by the way, doesn't even have 5 players on the roster.
Am I missing something? How the fuck have the people behind Sprout not been like headhunted for enormous GM? Like, this is another team that just consistently churns out talent. It's mega.
Yeah, totally.
Think about how many times they've lost all of the star players in the team and just rebuilt them. And again, they're always back at exactly this level. You notice, like, sort of the best of the tier 2, sort of like, it's mental. These guys obviously have talent. There's something going on behind that team. That's another team I'd love to see a write up about or something. They're doing something.
Yeah. I mean, listen. Obviously, the story we'll get to in a bit is they've just lost Faven, who, by the way, he's looked really, really good. Looks like another great find for them. But when you go and you look at, the players that they've brought through to play alongside Dennis and Spiddy. I know Dennis isn't there anymore, which is also crazy to think about. They've got an unbelievable track record of developing talent for other tier 1 teams to come in. And under that pressure and that scrutiny, they won the league they were in. Right? So who the fuck are Copenhagen Flames? Agreed. Who are you? You'll never read a story about Sprout players going up, I need fucking 40 grand or whatever it is. I don't even know if that's an accurate number. But, these guys just play the CS, do what they do, let the org be the org. Yeah, it's shocking to me that Copenhagen Flames have had this relatively small period of success, and it's gone to their heads to the point where they will talk themselves out of a deal with a big org like Complexity. Like, in the culture I'm from, early esports, you would have chewed your arm off to play for a brand like Complexity. Madness.
Also, I'll throw this in there as well. This is why we can't have nice things in esports. Because I'm going to say right now, right, I know the online era fucked it to where players still think it's the LAN era, and everyone who's a top 20 player, for example, he has to be on a team, and so on, like, which isn't the case in the online era. You've seen there's been very good players that just go out teams. But worse than that, I actually feel like Henry G and Cloud9 putting those salary figures out, which in principle was a very good thing, is terrible because it's made too many morons. Like, I guarantee you, for no joke, if I sat KNG down and I could really like drill into his brain and find out what he thinks, the reason why he can't accept 10k is because he's like, but I am better than Essetag. It's like, but you're not Essetag and this isn't Cloud9. Like, I haven't got 50k for you for this month, have you, fucking idiot? Like, you have to understand, he was overpriced. That wasn't actually appropriate. Yeah. But I get the fact they all think that way. If people don't know, fans are good. This is where I always sound like I'm shitting on players, right? Because fans think that's too reductive. You don't like that. It's like, they really are. They're just you with better aim. Like, if you're just a random fan of the game, they're just you with better aim and a few years of experience. Like, they really do think stupid shit like, but if I'm better than him, how can I not get more money? It's like, that was never been sports. Sports has never worked like that,
No, but also as well, like you say, like, like some guy who's really, really good in the same position, but a guy who's really, really good and really charismatic and really good at interviews and, has a great rapport with the fan base. Guess who makes more money?
Boss.
Guess who makes more money? In fact, the first guy can even be better than that guy. It doesn't matter. He's the complete fucking package. That's the point. And a lot of these players don't get that. Which, by the way, is one of the reasons why I really sort of like the League of Legends bubble, if you want to call it that, the hermetically sealed environment in which they operate. Because, guess what? A player who's good, but good with a massive social media following and does straight fire interviews and is willing to make content, he gets more of the bag than a guy who might just be commensurate to his competitive level. Like, in CS, unfortunately, people just look at the numbers and go, well, we nearly finished top 8 at a major, so if the person who won it gets 70 grand, we get 50, don't we? No, you fucking don't, sunshine. That's not how that works. That's never how it works.
By the way, I'll just go ahead and predict it because I saw that team and thought the same thing, Rich. I was even saying to you guys at the major.
Yeah,
I remember. Even when I was watching them win at the major and going, "This is incredible," I was going.
On our death segments, we never picked them up until right at the end, and then they fucking disappointed us.
I picked against them every time, mate. And the whole reason why is logically on paper this could never keep working. So that's why the saddest part about this is, look, everyone can speculate which players might have asked for more or whatever the fuck. I'm just telling you right now, you're going to look back and regret that missed offer one day. Like that, like you'll never get an offer like the one you probably had. Just very unlikely with where we're at in Counterstrike now, you ever get to what you probably could have made from this.
So while we're talking about Danish disappointment, let's talk about Device. Because something actually happened between the last episode and this one.
Oh, there's even some meta stuff we need to talk about with this one.
Go for it.
So basically, the setup is, if people don't know, we had obviously, like, let's just go back in time. Go back to the major, right? So coming into the major, NIP won the EU RMR. True, there's the caveat that it was a very weird RMR because it's not like a minor where you're trying to win it. It's more like qualify, and then it's up to you whether you try in the match. Everyone knows what's going on.
Got Hopium for no reason, even though I despise the NIP organisation.
But anyway, because of this result, and by the way, Device actually looked amazing at that RMR too, was the MVP of it. Yeah. Because of this performance and the major itself being in Sweden, a lot of people had hopes NIP are going to be like a contender, blah, blah, blah. But obviously they finished top 8 and they lost to G2, went up going to the final. Basically, after that, we got in this weird scenario where obviously they had like pretty bad results at Blast, etc. And then people had already heard these rumors of like, Device. I mean, people know the whole girlfriend thing, but people were already like, he's going to move back to Copenhagen. He's not feeling the vibe in Sweden anymore. Which, by the way, I will say a detail people always get wrong, Richard, is he didn't move to Sweden for NIP. He was already in Sweden. Maybe he just wants to leave Sweden. So I always have to reference that because I feel like people get a bit lost on that one. But anyway, because the rumor is maybe he's going back to Copenhagen. This rumor, I mean, people already socially were saying, well, since Astralis has some good players, but they have a terrible player as the AWPer, imagine if Device just came back. It's an obvious thing to say as a pundit, isn't it? But then all of a sudden this rumor came, maybe he is going back maybe he is going to join Astralis. And now that's what all the speculation is about, even though Device himself has done a series of tweets where he essentially says there's nothing to this story. I'm not coming back, essentially, right? So the topic is there's two angles we can go with. One is what is Device doing, what the fuck's going on with Ape, etc., etc. But the other one, which I'm sure some people will talk about, I want to get into is how can, because it's kind of like the shock story, how can there be stories which don't appear to actually have any substance to them unless like one guy just has the most amazing sources ever that none of us have, Rich? You know?
Yeah, well, so look, let's read these Device tweets. So Device was put in a position where he had to come out and address it. And by the way, we said on this podcast, he needs to address this. This wasn't a story you could kill with silence. It was going to create a negative vibe around the team you're in, a negative vibe around you, a negative vibe around Astralis, but who gives a fuck about that? It's one of these things that's got to get addressed. So Device he did 5 tweets to address it. And by the way, I think it shows a great level of maturity.
A very professional series of tweets, yeah.
Yeah, and but not only that, and as I'm sure you can identify with after the last few days, he's had so many stones cast at him, based on social media, things, trying to be honest and earnest, or, maybe he chose a bad word here or there or whatever the fuck, like going back to the Anonymous situation. I'm sure he's Twitter reverse. I'm sure he's starting to realize, I'm not the person that everybody loved and adored when I was winning everything with Astralis anymore. I'm now considered a bit of a turncoat and a bit of a whining baby, even though these things aren't true, by the way. So anyway, he stuck his head up above the parapet and he fucking said what he had to say, and this is what he said. Hey guys, 2021 has been a tough year for so many people, myself included. Absolutely. You are completely right, Nikolai. Today, there is new speculation as to the reason why I'm currently taking time out. I shouldn't have to, but as it's proving unfair on my teammates, I thought it's better to offer an explanation. My mental health has taken a hammering this year for both personal reasons and the pressure that comes with playing professional esports. Spoiler, by the way, for those that don't remember, this is like Device has always struggled with this. People forget that it took him getting a sports psychologist on board and reading books and working at it and being honest. He had a problem with choking in big games. His mental's always been susceptible. He should be commended for trying to work on that, but that doesn't. It's not job done just because you find a way to get over it in a completely different team, completely different environment, completely different time, right? It's obviously something that can come back. Nip and my teammates have been very understanding and let me work on my mental well-being until the end of the year. I've been taking active steps towards recovery, and I'm looking forward to putting in the work that will enable me to get back to the top of my game and be the best version of myself. All of the nonsense reports of me leaving the team are exactly that, nonsense. And when anyone is having issues surrounding the health of their mind, I believe it's imperative that they're given time and space to deal with them and not be bombarded with falsities. I hope this serves to stop further unsettling rumours, and I kindly ask the media to respect my privacy at this time. Thanks so much for your understanding, and here's looking forward to a brilliant 2022. What's your reaction to that, by the way?
As in just what he said?
Yeah.
I mean, here's the problem with it. It depends what hat I've got on. If I've just got Duncan Shields, the human being, obviously everything he said is accurate, isn't it? Like, yeah, in theory, you would want to give someone space if you knew they were struggling with their mental health. And obviously, the problem is, if you think from the perspective of the pundit, it's like, look, Device, that's all well and good, but like at the end of the day, you are paid a king's ransom to play a children's video game, and the only acceptable outcome is to be really good at the children's video game. Everything around that you have to make happen to make being good at the children's video game, that's on you. I'm afraid it just is. I agree, by the way, as well. I think orgs in the modern day should invest more money into these things. I actually wish that cons like Astralis didn't just lie and pretend they did, and actually did give players time off at certain points, or give them a better support structure, or tell them at certain points when you know that people are in bad situations, look, I understand the results for the next month might not be as good as we hoped. Let's get through it, and then once we're in a better position, we'll go for the championship next month. Listen, I love all that stuff. It sounds great. The problem is, like, we live in a very cynical, fucking performance-based industry. story. So I sort of agree with Device. The part at the end is the key part because it leads into the meta topic to me, which is that's the part I'm really interested in. It's the idea that he doesn't just say, I won't be going to Astralis or I'm loyal to NIP. He very carefully, it looked to me like, sort of implies this isn't even a normal roster move where it's like, maybe I'm in talks, but I haven't done it, or maybe I'm not going to do it, or maybe they decided not. It's literally almost like, this is why what you said about the fact that he could have lashed out is kind of key. This could literally just be a tweet to Nell and DeSoto saying, how dare you lie about my career? You're saying that I'm going to join a team that there is no factual basis to, and that's not true. And by the way, I'm also in a place where my mental health has taken a hit, and this has now made me feel kind of like upset in Fnatic in League of Legends if people know the story. Like I have to come out and defend myself over something that is not even something I should have to defend because you've caused rumours and essentially you're causing me problems, perhaps even with my mental health. Now, the reason why I bring that up is because I'm not actually going to take that position. My question to you is, I want to see where we're going to go. This topic goes like this. My issue is this. Normally, and I will say in advance, there's an obvious bias I have here because the originator of this story is Nell, who, even though as far as I know, all the stories I've seen him put forward publicly on his like vonvp.fr, they all seem to be true. They all seem to be based on real information.
He's got a record for sure.
People are going to think, you're just saying it because you're biased against him. No, normally when a journalist says A is going to happen and they are a journalist with tenure and a track record of being truthful, and a player says that's a lie, it's not happening, I'm sorry, I tend to side with the journalist because I've seen it happen too many times. So that's why I was very interested to see where we would go on this topic, because I'm sorry, this is a rare instance where maybe you can say you think it's biased against Nell. I wouldn't say necessarily, but this is one where I have to say Device's side actually sort of rings true. And I will add in, I've literally not heard anyone in my network of people credibly tell me that it was going to happen, he's going to go to South. So I have to say I'm a bit wary on this one. I'm not sure where my footing is totally. So I wanted to know where you were at on it.
Well, so I'll just put my cards on the table because, as you know, I don't give a fuck what people think about the cards I got. So when it comes to Nell, I think I've been pretty supportive of him in general, as a rule. I think I've talked to him privately about stories and stuff. I've never had any issues.
You've never called him out over basically was the thing about he refused
I'll never chime with that. I'll never chime with that. If you want to be a serious journalist, put your name on your shit. I mean, that's just how I was trained.
Yeah, agreed.
I don't know if it's different in a more modern era, but I'm from a time when accountability requires a name to it. So we've done that topic to death. But let me just also tell you, by and large, okay, this will drive everyone mad. You blocked him! Yeah. Right, yeah, I've got him blocked on Twitter. He's an insufferable cunt. You live in France, for fuck's sake. Your opinion on Donald Trump is about as relevant as my opinion on fucking Kim Jong-un. I think he's a cunt. What am I fixing by calling him a cunt? Endlessly, constantly, absolutely nothing. People in North Korea are still living under a fucking tyranny, right? It doesn't matter how many times I tweet it. By the way, to even compare Trump to that cunt is ridiculous. And I know it's ridiculous, and I'm sick of motherfuckers just talking. Right? He's not even he's not even politically relevant anymore. Just stop. Zip it. I am bored. So what I do is, if someone's Twitter feed is just bile and garbage and shite, you know what I do as an adult? I just think I don't want to see that coming across my timeline. So you block it. It's not an indictment on them as a person. I'm blocking the tweets, not the person. The person can still talk to me if we're ever in the same building.
Still following the work.
By the way, I wouldn't even know who he was if he come up to me. Yeah. I just have to take you. Someone could prank me tomorrow and go, "Hi, I'm Nell." I wouldn't know because he's a fucking shadowy figure, which I don't like. But anyway, so
does that make you sort of question if Device is telling the truth, essentially?
No. So listen, because this is where it gets mega complicated. You're talking about wearing hats, mate. At least your hats all belong in your fucking wardrobe. I've got hats from multiple wardrobes that I have to now go. So Richard Lewis, godfather to all the fucking esports journalists, is just sort of giving Nell a little bit of a slap on the hand and beckoning him to come back to the light. Because I always believe in redemption arcs. I want him to be the journalist that he's been for years without any of the other bullshit. But this story is sticking in my craw, and it's hard to talk about because DeSoto, I'm an editor at large. So just to also clarify what that is, because I've talked about it with my stream, but maybe not so much on this podcast. Basically, DeSoto were overpaying me to shout in a webcam. I'm an editor at large. I pick and choose my hours. I pick and choose my stories. If you want to publish an op-ed, you can. If you want to do a story, you can. If you want to do, and the publication essentially has you on board because they know your content's good and you offer a lot of credibility and a lot of reach and a lot of audience. And Deserto, by the way, definitely don't need me for the reach and the audience, but they might need me for the other shit. And I've known the Deserto crew, probably 15 years now. I've known them since I got into esports, some of them. So I like being over there. And I really like Lewis Mira, and I've said it multiple times. I think he was the best thing about HLTV. I think he propped up that site for years. When I was asked, just as an editor at large, not someone making hiring decisions, about who my dream team of journalists would be, he was one of the names I put down to come in and corner the CSGO thing. And by the way, if you've not seen Lewis Mira's interviews and all the stuff he's been doing since he joined the circle, you're missing out, because it is straight fucking fire. Real good interviews with real good questions, not like that HLTV shit that the other kids are doing where they want to ingratiate themselves to the players. Lewis Mira is ascended, right? But Lewis Mira was the guy that said, in conjunction with Nell, and Deserto ran the story. So when that happened, I'm like, right, okay, now it's in my backyard, now it's in my manor, so I better go.
Just to give people some context, everyone won't know the industry. When that happens, there's a joint story. What that nearly always means is either A, we both have separate parts. We have separate parts of the puzzle, we need to put it together, or the other angle is, because some of these people obviously are friendly, not all of them hate each other like DK and the others are, right? Because sometimes they are like, acquaintances at least. Sometimes it's more like, look, the two of us are like this close to completing the story. Like, look, why gamble that one of us gets the last piece in the next 3 hours and fucks the other one and the other one gets nothing? Why don't we both just agree, put everything we've got together, we've got the full thing, and then we'll just joint publish it? So normally, essentially, the reason I'm saying that is, that doesn't mean Mira just said, oh, Nell says it's true. Like, presumably that means Mira himself has investigated it and he thinks there's something to it.
And so generally how it pans out in esports, and not like the rest of the world, but how it pans out in esports is, you're meant to have two sources, and most good journalists, even in esports, run off that, right? It has to be one exceptional source, or at least two, or, ones that would know. One guy verifies the other. By the way, just as a thing I always do, I always ask the one a detail that only the other one could know.
Independently verified.
Independently, and then you see whether or not they've colluded, and essentially it's one source masquerading as two people and shit like that. I'm always thinking about this stuff. It's why my record's so good.
Yes.
Because I don't want to be the guy who publishes a false story and then everyone goes, remember when you got that wrong? Remember when you got that wrong? That one you got wrong. I'm not doing that. So Lewis Mira probably has a source, probably someone from inside the Danish scene, or maybe someone in Device's circle, who knows?
I think I know where we're even going here, by the way. Here's the thing. I'll give everyone a little teaser to get them hard. I think there's a plot twist coming that we haven't mentioned so far at all that connects into a famous storyline. So get ready, guys. Just get ready.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to that, because maybe we're on the same wavelength. But
let's see. I'm interested.
Yeah. So, and then over at Nell's got a source. And Nell's source has told him, again, could be someone from Device's circle. And because you've only got one source, you get talking to the other guy, and the other guy goes, well, I heard this. And how journalists operate, by the way, is they're super cagey. So it's
even better than that. What you do is you sort of make it so that, essentially, this isn't technically dishonest, but it is disingenuous. What you do is, if they go... And of course, you'll know this, but Shocks is joining Liquid. You go, I mean, it was obvious, wasn't it? Shit, Shocks joining Liquid. Take that down right quickly. And the joke, that's part of how it's a game of poker if people don't know, essentially. You don't want to talk
there is a lot of that.
Yes.
For real, even I've done
some amazing shit over the years where people just assumed I knew it. And it's like, I didn't even know about that.
And of course, he's addicted to heroin. Oh, yeah, one of them,
I love that. I love getting info like that.
So,
it's a freebie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally gonna. Yeah. So anyway, that does happen. But so the problem you've got is if you've got one source and it's a big story, you don't want to run it just on the basis of that one source. Especially if you're a little bit iffy or a little bit insecure about it or whatever, you're not quite 100%. And the same goes for the other guy. So what you do is journalists talk, and he says, "Have you heard about this?" And then you go, "Yeah, I heard about this." Now the question becomes. At what point is it right? Because I'm trying to think. I don't think I've had researchers for my articles. and I've said like additional research by. But I
Bylands,
don't.
yeah.
Yeah, but I don't think I don't think I've ever shed a
you've
byline
collabed,
on
have
an
you?
investigative report. I don't think so.
Wait a second. Let me think. Am I wrong? But didn't you last year actually collaborate with HLTV on a post about Astralis? Am I wrong on that?
Lewis Mira. So that's why I don't think about him at HLTV. Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, that was
Wasn't
the
it
first time.
CSPPA one or something?
Yeah, that was the first time. No, but
That's the only one I can remember, though.
Yeah, you're right. I think it was the first time. But that was also sort of predicated on the fact that we were going in. I mean, it was like mega in depth. It was like days of talking and a bunch of other stuff. I already had on my sources. I was just trying to get. It was like I can't remember which facet of the story it was. They had like some additional detail. It might have been related to the CSPPA now that you mention it. But anyway, whatever. So I've generally never done it. I've done it once. But, you know, what you'll see is a lot with the Rush B Medias and the HLTVs and Nels. They all do these reports together. And it's like even though they're at different editorial publications, they fucking are all sort of colluding to get stories over the line. And it's good in theory, but the problem you have with it is it only takes one person in this chain of trust to be wrong, and now you're all on the hook.
Yep.
You've got to be, you know. So if one guy comes to you and says, I've got one source, they're a good source, and you go, can you tell me your source? And I'll also, spoiler, journalists don't share sources with other journalists.
No way.
Because you can't. There's no way. Also, by the way, not just because you're ethically bound not to, but because I'm not going to give you my source. You're a rival. You're a direct competitive rival. It's not just about the ethics. So you're never going to give. You're never going to give them your source. So essentially, you end up in a world where if you've got one source and he's got one source and they're telling you the same thing, could be the same source.
Here's my twist. You ready?
Could be the same source.
Because people are thinking there's nothing left to the story, right? You've pretty much explained what in most cases would happen in a story, how it would work. Here's the problem, though. The two teams in question are NIP and Astralis. Let's take a quick gander in our minds over the last couple of years. Yeah. Oh, the two organisations which, between Swedish and fucking Danish media, particularly mainstream media, have constantly sort of toyed like puppet masters with their domestic media to basically get constant spin and positive PR to anything happening to their orgs, which in the real world carries the implication, both are now on certain stock markets, that you actually might make the company's perception be better for investor confidence, for example. So my problem with this story, Richard, is this. As you say, if this wasn't Astralis, I would actually genuinely have to come down on the position that no matter how earnest Device seems, I don't believe two veteran journalists could collectively get it totally wrong and have nothing of substance. So that implies at a minimum Device is lying and he at least thought about it or had a convo. But here's my problem, Richard. I am of the opinion, notice how I carefully phrased that Astralis lie to people in the industry and that they do spread rumours that aren't true and that they do things as minor PR stunts that mean that they get a little pop in the news. Sometimes that's all it is. It's just for the news story. It's just to have your name in the headlines for another week. Because who is the ultimate benefactor of the story being that Device would want to, notice that's the key thing, not that he is going to Astralis, but that he's open to going back to Astralis. The biggest benefactor to that story, if it doesn't happen, is Astralis. Because it implies he would still go back after everything they did to him. He would go back after he signed a blockbuster deal with another org. He would go back after all the recent shit with Lockheed and the team. That it implies that he essentially approves of Astralis and thinks they are a World Championship org. The best person to have seeded this story is someone in Astralis. And the problem is that might have been a brilliant source for some of these guys in the past about moves. It might even have been the real source. Might even, by the way, if you know the way esports works, guess what? Teams are the same as those journalists. Who do you think gives you the info about Astralis? Fucking North, Heroic. Who do you think gives you the info about Heroic? Astralis, North. Like, that's the way the industry works. So my problem is, even though this is pure speculation, I think some of that could be at play. Because again, I'm trying to think I can't think of any other scenario, basically, as to why these journalists collectively just got together and did a joint report and lied. Like, that in itself also doesn't make sense. But at the same time, it also doesn't make sense that Device just lies like this. Because even though players are shameless, they don't normally phrase it like this. They always put plausible deniability in there. So I'll give you an example, Richard. There was a famous story years ago, which people might think is the one time I was caught lying, where I said Flusher and then were cut from the team. And then they were like, no, they chose to leave. If you can't see linguistically how there's a million miles of fucking wiggle room, and that's a comment there, mixed with who told who what, and was this his personal reason for leaving, if you can't see that there's a lot of fuckery there, the problem is Device said it was a falsity. As in, there's no basis to it's just a lie. And by the way, as I said, he could have even used that word. He could have just said, he could have just tagged Nell and Lewis Mir and just said, you are lying about my career and destroying my mental health. Why? And by the way, I'll just tell you right now, Device, I know you haven't had much luck with Twitter, but you would have absolutely had a slam dunk and ruined those guys' careers for like 5 years if you'd done that. So in some ways,
I want to give him credit as well. Yeah. I want to give, like Device has handled that in the way I wish every player would handle addressing stories, because here's the other problem you've got. Even if it was true, Device has to kind of say it isn't. This is why I'm never too down on players when they lie about reports like that, because it's exactly like he says. He's got to go and play with all the guys. They have to believe he wants to be there. So you got to tell the lie. And in the grand scheme of things, it's a white lie. And it's why I never got upset. When an org says it, fuck you, right? When a player says it, I know why you're doing it, homie. It's okay. I'm never going to hate you for that. Now, if you say I'm a liar and you tag me and all your little fucking goonies come and harass me for a week, yeah, now you're a cunt, right? Device didn't do that. Device basically said, look, there's been these reports, unspecified, didn't name an outlet, didn't name a journalist. They've been going around for ages. They were on fucking Reddit before any cunt even officially reported it. So, it's
like you've said previously, it's also the obvious move on paper if you're playing Football Manager, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like that move before. Like, you think everyone didn't spend a year going, why doesn't the safe guy, Super Sick Orper, on a team that's not good enough, join Furia, really good team that doesn't have a Super Sick? Like, everyone, even if that move isn't happening, everyone could see it should happen, shouldn't it? It's obvious. Yeah. So same thing. Yeah, there's some of that as well. People sometimes guess and hope. That's what I want to get your take on. Like, as Richard Lewis, the person on BTN, not the editor in large, so what do you think? Do you have an angle on this? How could it occur, essentially? Because essentially, this is like some fucking Poirot, like Sherlock Holmes shit. It's like a locked room mystery. It can't work as it is presented. Someone has to be lying.
Yeah, timing is a really kind of underestimated component of investigative journalism. That if you come across a detail, let's say you get an email or a leaked document or whatever, it's incredibly important to date it before you run with it, because there is a world of difference between, I'll use an example of a company doing something sinister, There's a world of difference between a company, baby food company used to put arsenic in their baby food 20 years ago to baby food company is putting arsenic in the baby food now. Right? And so that's an extreme example so people can kind of conceptually see what I'm getting at. But let's say, right, after Device moved and after his now well-publicized breakup with his partner, he picked up the phone to Astralis and he said, guys, I'm fucking miserable. I'm despondent.
Talking maybe a few months ago, people don't realise the time. Yeah. When the team was going downhill, obviously.
Exactly. It's hard in Nip. I don't even know if I can carry this team. I need to come back somewhere where I can be. And
at a time, remember, when all the players are still there, you could potentially rejoin the original lineup. You're not joining this team. Yeah, exactly.
And so let's say he picked up the phone then, and Estrada said, "Well, yeah, but I mean, we have just sold you. Can you work on an IP to make this happen?" And then he went and had talked to management and got told a resounding no, because I think he's got a 3-year contract over there or something. It's not
makes sense. Yeah.
So that. If that's the information you use to publish a report saying he wants to go back to Astralis, you failed. You failed. It's not great journalism. But let's say he was doing it last week. Let's say before Christmas, he's going, this ain't gonna work out at Nip. I mean, fucking hell, like, look at the players I'm playing with. And like, I'd really love to play with Blame F and Config now that you've got them on board.
Yep.
Now we've got a story. What my deepest suspicions, and again, this is all it can be, I have not worked on this story. And I'll also just add, as much as I think Nell's an insufferable cunt, I never want to see another opinion of his ever again. He's an impeccable journalist historically. You will never take that away from him. And he's made a stellar contribution to roster move reporting in our space.
People don't know this. Before I blocked him, I used to retweet his fucking article because they were legit news stories. It's just the same thing. He's just such an insufferable fucking human on Twitter. By the way, I'm certainly I live in a glass house on that. You can block me. If you have notes, I don't care about being blocked. I don't give a fuck. Everyone in the world can block me. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And so listen, that's all that is. But it's nobody should impugn his work or his reputation on that basis. And with Lewis Mira is he's the editor. He's the editor. You don't get a job of being an editor at a publication the size of Deserto with the tenure he's got at HLTV without being an excellent journalist. So I am not saying these guys are wrong, but this story just doesn't ring true to me, knowing everything I know. And I think maybe somewhere along the line, Device, when he was his lowest point mentally, looked at maybe going back, because when you just a bit of old man boomer life advice, by the way. When you're having a tough
By the way,
time.
one thing I'd just add in, because again, I think like the context will get lost, because a lot of the things you're saying it almost like assume certain premises, because these are a million conversations we've had. I think there's even an element. I'll give you a speculation. Here's an angle. So we know that Nell has contacts to some people in Astralis, because he had the story about Magus and Dupree and Zonic going to Vitality. Well, all it would have taken, literally, this is why actually Device could also not totally be lying, but not totally be telling the truth. What could easily have happened, Richard, is this also happens all the time in roster meetings. It's not an official one. Maybe the org was never contacted by Device. Maybe Nip the org never contacted Astralis the org. But maybe Device at his lowest point, like you're talking about, messages, let's say, Dupree, a mate of his for a long time, and goes, sometimes I wonder, maybe I should just come back to Astralis. Like, do you think that's even possible? Then maybe at any point in time between that point and to yesterday or whatever the Device published, like, all that happens is Dupree himself mentions perhaps to someone else. Device was once thinking of coming. Again, you can see how these things could easily by telephone get out there as well. And like, again, it's not like, this is why it's difficult. It's not like you totally lied. It's like, this is why it's so difficult to be a journalist. If people don't know, you don't go to publish if you've only got 90% of the story. Listen, 90% is still most of the story. You got the gist of it, but you haven't nailed all the details down. There's too many areas like this where the guy can go, well, I only talked to a guy I know. I never asked anyone about joining. There's too many areas you can get fucked on, I feel like.
Yeah, and so my read on this is that I think maybe there was something to it, but I don't think it's happening now. And like I say, just a bit of boomer life advice: when times are tough, like I mean real tough. I'm not talking about you fucking hate your job. We all hate our job, no matter what your job is. 6 months into a job, you fucking hate your job. It's the best job in the world. You can have the most rewarding job. You can be saving fucking babies' lives. You're telling me like pediatricians don't get fucking down on it at some point. It's just the human condition. But when times are really tough, and you go through bereavements, breakups, you lose things, periods of unbelievable bad health. Mentally, naturally, you gravitate to the good times. You want to go back.
It's like that rant I had about The Last Dance. Of course, you look back at when it was awesome and go, let's just do it again. Just roll it back.
Exactly.
Roll it back for years.
But the sad reality about being human and about the nature of linear time and about the finite nature of existence on an individual basis is there is no back. There's no back button. There'll never be a back button. And so, you can want to be around that person, but guess what? They've changed. You've changed. Everything's changed. And I think probably what happened was in maybe a weak moment or something, Device floated a question that was never really serious.
Testing the water, yeah.
Yeah, and somebody has then taken that at its entirety face value without the nuance of the context. And whoever it is that's leaking this shit to the journalists has told the journalists, guys, he definitely wanted to come back. And technically, they're not wrong. They're not lying. But I genuinely believe, and I'm like you, players lie all the fucking time. Orgs lie all the fucking time. Generally, by and large, believe the journalists.
Yes.
I just think in this case, I think it's probably a little bit of outdated information. Funnily enough, by the way, what I probably should have done professionally before doing this bit was I should have just picked up the phone to Lewis. But I mean, like I've been mad busy. He's mad busy. He's got a family, so I haven't even had time to do that. And nor would I expect him to tell me who his sources were or anything like that if he did, because he's a professional. So I mean, for me, I don't buy this story. It's the long and the short of it. And I also don't think Device. It's one thing to say I'm not going. I stay, I alive. It's one thing to do that. To do 5 tweets saying, please respect my mental health. And mate, if you then go back to Astralis it's going to be indefensible.
Oh,
It really will be.
No, the other thing I'll add in as well is this, which actually goes counter to what we said when we sort of set up why we don't like Nell and all this, blah, blah, blah. What I'll say is this, it also is actually out of character for the pattern of behavior of these journalists. Normally, when you get a person who gambles, I'll give you two obvious stories you're all going to know. How about the one from 2 years ago, I think it was, where NAF was going to leave when Team Liquid was going downhill and he was going to go to EG, wasn't he? Except as far as we know, that was never an actual move. That was even less than some of the things we speculated on here. That was never a move. Similarly, I once saw someone literally report, this is a brilliant one if you love linear time and the way context works. I saw someone report what the format for Flashpoint would be while I myself was coming up with the format for Flashpoint and had told no one. So that's an incredible one because you're yourself going, well, I'm the only person in the world who knows this cannot be true. So that was a pretty brilliant one. So basically, I know, yes, there's a lot of fuckery, but here's the difference. The reason I didn't mention the names of any of those reporters, I can't even remember the names. These are nobodies. It's always a nobody. Hence, by the way, why people like Rush B Media have gotten in trouble in the past. Certain people, it's a lot of NA people like to say because they're more in the clout culture, aren't they? There's been a lot of people who have overstepped the boundaries and done some mad reach where they've either guessed a story's true or they have the most tenuous evidence.
The Rush B Media example is obviously the worst because that was where they literally took something we said on this podcast.
Yes.
And ran it as if it was a legitimate story and then said, I got burned by a source. You didn't get burned by a source. Some cunt came to you and said, this is definitely happening because they watched our podcast and told you verbatim it was, and you didn't vet that source. That's your bad. It's never going to not be your bad.
The point is,
as a journalist, you can never say the source burned me. It's your job to know.
Oh, of course, yeah. There's no such thing. The source burned you just means you lost. You failed. Yeah. By the way, if you say the source burned me, you're also saying I am a fundamentally bad journalist. You just said it in different words, and you think it's an excuse. No, the point I was going to make was I can get why a young person who hasn't made it yet gambles to try and get the big scoop. This doesn't make any sense. It's the same reason we always say the same thing, Richard.
Very true.
How do we do 20 years of journalism and stuff, and then just pick it? You know what? Tell you what, Richard, I built up all that credit 20 years. I think I'll just have a lie about whether fucking OC's joining Liquid on. Why would I waste? What would that be when I cash in my chips? I know. The problem people don't get is this. The difference is the Astralis Players to Vitality story. Maybe that's a story you might gamble on if you were it's an enormous blockbuster, came out during the major. You don't do it for there's a story that Device might think about maybe possibly that's not even something that's not worth the gamble. So I'll just say that it doesn't. That's why I say it's a really interesting one actually to break down on this podcast because nothing on the face value makes sense about it.
Literally nothing. Not Device's response, not the reports. Yeah. To
me, it feels like a house of cards of fuckery. A little bit of truth here and some bullshit here, and then someone did something and did they quite check this, and then maybe he did. Maybe Device is true that now it's a falsity, but maybe you know what I mean. It feels like we'd have to strap these fuckers down and do an interrogation session to ever get to the truth of it.
Yeah. Anyway, a couple more roster moves, and then we'll get to the viewer questions. Do you want to do a small one and save the big two for the end of year?
Yeah, let's do it. I'd like to get other people's thoughts.
Yeah, because obviously I know we've already mentioned Valde to EG. I'll hold on to that.
It's not long till the episode anyway.
Yeah, and then obviously Rops has officially left Mouse, so we'll hold on to that.
We'll also talk about that 10 fucking million times.
Yeah, no, but it'd be good. Exactly, it'd be good to get some fresh opinions on it. I will just talk about Big officially signing Faven from Sprout because we already touched upon that. Now, obviously, for those who haven't been paying attention to Tier 2 Counterstrike and listen, especially over the holidays, I totally get it. This player, Faven, at Sprout, has just been the best thing about that team. I mean, that team has always been solid, but this guy, so when you talk about Tier 2, these are the types of teams he's been doing a number on. Godsent, who we all say is the most improved team in World Counter-Strike, Forza.
Forza mad underrated, yeah.
And Entropic. He's been
the best of the Tier 2 teams. Yeah. Absolutely the best.
Yeah, he's been battering these guys. In fact, actually, in the final of the ESEA League, it was obviously Entropic and Sprout. And I mean that, by the way, Entropic should be favourites for that. No, there's no getting away from that. Well, basically, Sprout did a job, and they did a very good job. And this was predicated on this Faven player dropping 22 on the first map, and that was a dominant performance. And then in the 16-14, he's got 30 kills. He was the difference maker that stopped it going to a third map. So this guy has been the German talent, the German prodigy for a while. And I'm actually excited about him joining Big, because maybe, that is what they've needed. They needed that extra guy to sort of come in, and somebody who probably can do a bit of, give them that firepower. Now, where it gets interesting to me is Gade, who was their other big surprise signing. He's the guy that's making room. Now, keep in mind, it's not a nationality thing, because Gade speaks fluent German. That was the reason he was brought in the first place.
They were all raving about him, if you remember. They all kept talking about how he's doing such a great job, fit the team, and all that jazz.
No, but I also think he didn't. I don't think he played.
He was fine, mate.
Yeah. I mean, listen, he's still Gade. I mean,
I don't think he was the worst player in the team, put it that way.
No. So it was a surprise to me to see him be the make weight, but obviously, I mean, it wasn't great for him, because his last few outs, he had a bit of a nightmare. I think it was against FaZe, and in that Fnatic game they played.
Okay.
He struggled in those. So, I mean, look, Faven's an upgrade on Gade. I just thought there was room for Gade to be in the team. But what do you make of Big now? Like, do you think Faven's going to be the guy to turn him around?
The big problem I have is the player in that team that I obviously didn't like Gade in the sense that he replaced Zantares. I agree. If you just watch him play, he looked all right in the team. He wasn't bad. And if you know the way Big is in terms of the size of the org, that's an appropriate player to be in your org. He's doing fine. My problem always in Big, when I watched the last few years, there's twofold. One, I always thought Keto was never really that good, especially this year. I thought he's had a pretty bad time of it. I think he's kind of a bit washed on his game, or he just hasn't made impact. And then two, even though Sirison is good, I think he's just dropped off a little bit. Last year he was sort of like a breakout player who genuinely looked like one of the absolute best players in the world when we were online. Offline and in 2021, he's just a good player. So the problem they have is they still lack star power. So for that angle, I love this move. Like, this actually does look like, it's like I told by the way, I'm friends with Legia when he was the coach. I don't tell these guys behind the scenes. I told them, why don't you just go and do what you always do? Go to Sprout and alternate attacks and those teams. Look for the next super skilled mechanical player. You know you need firepower. Put him in the position. You've got the rest of the players, and boom, you've got the team, right? So I always thought they were deluding themselves that Gade was going to do it, because they obviously lacked like a real star player. So I think that angle, they've sort of solved it. My only issue is they're still keeping Keto. They're still keeping a lot of the same team. They're just trying like different coaches or whatever. Like, I don't know if it's enough. My problem every time it comes, I'll always bring this up. Since now Heroic's been bought out, the only two teams in this position beyond CIS teams are Big and ENCE. And it's like, if you just know the budgets these teams are working with, they shouldn't be anywhere close to the best. They shouldn't. It's like, genuinely, it's like a team who have the budget to be in the championship are supposed to win the Premier League. Like, not just be in the Premier League. Like, this is win the Premier League. So if you want the analogy to continue, when a team like Big can become like sixth in the Premier League, I'd just go, well done. That's incredible. I don't know how you did it. So my problem is I don't ever know that the problem with Big basically goes like this. Just like ENCE, they have a baggage and a history that's still recent enough. It's always going to skew how good we think they should be. They were the #1 ranked team in the world at one point last year, if people don't know. I'll just say it right now. As long as LANs exist and they don't have some crazy example like Zantares just play for them, they're never going to be the #1 ranked team again. That's not even conceivable. In fact, now we've gone back to LAN, we're also back in the real world where you're not just going to have teams that have never done anything go to the top. So unfortunately, I don't think Big can ever be that satisfying a project if you want to see them really get to the heights they were at in the past. I think the Faven move's a good one. It's the obvious player to get. It's worth even giving time to him. I'd give him at least 6 months. Try everything you can do to make him comfy, set him in the team. I think the rest of the pieces are good. Like, I still love the fact they've got Tabson. I think Tizian's always underrated. So I think there's enough in the team to be good. But if I had to guess, like, even with this move, they're probably like the 8th best team if things go well. Otherwise, they're probably like the 14th best team. So I'd say, though, I think actually people underrate. The Gade lineup was never impressive, but it was sort of like quietly, it just kept ticking along. Like, they would always be in the tournaments. They were always qualified. Somehow they were never terrible, put it that way. I think people overblew how bad they were.
what I'm worried about a little bit is because they've done that thing that orgs do where they want to make a move sound more than just, hey, we're improving our team. Right, that's all you need to say. They did this thing where they went, it's a record transfer for a German player.
Yes.
And listen, it's true. I know they're not lying about that. I mean,
It's probably not very high though, right?
Yeah, because think about what you're actually saying there.
And also, it's one of those sentences I hate where it starts sexy as fuck, and as it keeps going, it gets like it's like if I go, it's the highest historical signing ever in Welsh football. I say, the Welsh football. I was hyped until the Welsh football word came up.
When Sam Davis was signed for Total Network Solutions for a packet of cigarettes and a pint of cider, it was a record move. Yeah, it's ridiculous, So, I mean, but my question to you is, it's Sprout. He's had that freedom, and he's enjoyed all of the plaudits of being the farmer of tier 2. He is going to find it more difficult to step up. And my worry is that with the PR messaging of he's our big superstar signing, the most expensive player in German history, plus we've dropped our most recent signing to bring him in, and he's the firepower now, guys. Because hang on, I've got the statement here. Where did they say? Where was it? Hang on, I'm looking at it. Yeah, Faven has been in the international spotlight with his excellent performances over the last 12 months and has been on the shortlist of many clubs. Now, I mean, saying he's in the international spotlight, you're stretching it.
Very disingenuous. And they just mean with foreign teams, let's be real. But they make it sound like,
Exactly. It's PR. So obviously you do what PR does. But, he hasn't been in the international spotlight. And realistically, how many clubs could he go and play for? He's the German one would probably be the best fit. I think we can all agree, as he's German and he speaks German. So, yeah, I mean... what I'm worried about is that
if I'm trying to even think what team could possibly, it's not going to be. It's going to be something like FPX or something, isn't it? It's going to be that level of a team,
Yeah, totally. So, I mean, look, I'm just worried that branding of he's the savior and
put a lot of pressure on him to carry out the game.
Yeah, and I'm just worried about that. Just a little bit worried about that. So, do you think that'll be a factor? Before we wrap up,
it is the team that is absolutely the antithesis of a plug and play team. This is a team where they'll just straight up tell you, no, we are trying to build a full spectrum tactical system that goes from A to Z. That's right, Americans, A to Z is the correct fucking terminology. It goes from A to Z, and basically you have to know everything you're doing at all points in time. You have to know how we're playing and what the concept is and what the tactics are, and what the tendencies are. And you have to know it all. Because the thing I appreciate about Big, by the way, is even though I think it's a bit naive at this point to think it'll ever happen again, they do try to genuinely be one of the best tactical teams in the world. Look like they keep going for that. They keep trying to build up that.
I really do admire the way Big keep plugging away. Yeah, totally.
Just think about it. Every other team in the modern day does the opposite. They all go. It's like that. Why I always say Face Clamor Carrigan ruined Counterstrike in some sense, because everyone forgets you don't have Carrigan. So they go, so you mean if I just get a load of skilled individual players, it'll be good? Yeah, that's what Contact and all those teams tried for 3 years, mate. Unsurprisingly, they never take over and become top 5 in the world because you don't have the structure. At the end of the day, you can't just take 4-star players and chuck them in a room and go, when I come back in an hour, you better be able to beat Australia. That's not happening. It's just implausible. So problem is, they're the opposite. They're going to try and go for perfection, essentially, and all this incredible stuff. So that's the only area I wonder about. It's as you said, he was obviously a big fish in a small pond in Sprout, wasn't he? Essentially, he was the man there. So I do wonder when he comes in. Listen, if you've seen the way they ran things with Smooya and even Zantara's I've heard, they absolutely in Big do not just go, well, you're the big star, so you kind of run the show. Even if you're the big star, you genuinely have to humble yourself and learn the system and do what they ask tactically within the game. You don't just go, actually, fuck that, I'm rushing mid with it. There's no Woxic shit going on in Big. So that's the area where I do have my concerns. It's not as simple as saying, will this team be good because the players are good? You have to see how the mesh is, which I think it's a fair point to question. I think there's a good reason to question this team particularly.
And look, obviously as well, I'll just end on this point that, the good news is my understanding is Tabson is a fan and is one of the guys who was like, yeah, please, so he's going to get his touches, so to speak. But, I mean, I want to see how they do in the first month or two back in competition before I make any sort of proclamations, because it's a hell of a step up. You know, the tier 1 gap. He's earned his chance. It doesn't mean he's going to run with it. So there you go. That's all of the news. Now we move on to the segment. Viewer questions. You, all the people on the Patreon, they pay us money. We answer their questions. Sometimes they're not questions at all, but it doesn't matter. You paid. You say what you want. Well, within reason. Except that one guy who keeps sending the most mentally specific questions, for which I would have to prepare like it was an exam to even begin to answer them. But you know, that's all right. You pay your money. Watch Doge. Have you seen the new season of The Witcher? And if so, how true to the source material is it? Where does this TV interpretation of a beloved fantasy IP rank amongst other fantasy settings such as Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones? I don't know if
Here's the thing.
Witcher dude?
I've seen all the seasons of The Witcher because the last one came out like 4
cool.
weeks or something. The problem is, though, and this is why we'll have different opinions. I've never played the games, or I don't even know are there books of them? No, I haven't read the books or the game. I've only seen the TV show. So I will say a lot of my criticisms, like I imagine I have probably a way lower opinion of The Witcher than people who are fans of the show do. But that's also based on the fact that I can't know what I don't know. So, for example, I'll tie this to Dune, which I actually have now seen. Like the funny thing is, when I watched the movie Dune, I thought like that's pretty good, but they could have done so much more with it. But that's only because I know what the books contain. I actually can understand, as mad as this sounds, that if you watched the movie Dune without knowing anything about Dune, it's actually a pretty fucking banging movie, isn't it? Like what an incredible spectacle. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't know the like lore that you're missing out on the background. It just looks like a badass one-off movie. I mean, it's going to be like sequels, but you know, you get the premise. Like you don't have to actually know anything. So my problem with The Witcher goes like this: one, they, unlike things like Lord of the Rings, they tried to put like a levity into The Witcher that I personally find jarring. Like I'll tell everyone right now, I hate that character who's the fucking bard. If he comes on screen, it makes the show worse for me. Because when he's not on screen, it is a show that's like a fantasy one with like interesting elements. It hints at a larger history. It has timeline element. Like that's all interesting. That's pretty well done. I'd say as a show, it's like a 7 out of 10 as general show. It's not a bad show. I don't think it has a bad flaw, but I personally don't see the ceilings very high. But I'm not a fan of the series. I don't know the franchise outside of the show.
Yeah, so obviously read the books, played the games. Was psyched. I mean, listen,
the games are supposed to be mega, right?
Yeah, the games, right? So here's why the games are worth a separate kind of almost like because they're not just a straight adaptation. By the time Witcher 3 comes rolling around, especially, what they've done is they've taken so famously as well, the guy that wrote the books. Sapkowski, he signed away the rights to the games developer at CD Projekt Red for not much.
Right.
And then it was this huge critical and commercial success, and obviously, and then he was like, "Can I have?" But don't I get? So he was like sort of publicly condemning the games a little bit, sort of infer it, you know. And he was just being a cunt. And it, by and large, by the way, if you look into interviews and things, he said he's not like some sort of like, you know, nice George R.R. Martin, happy to talk to you kind of dude. He's a bit cantankerous. But anyway, so the books, by the way, and you also have to understand they're being translated from an incredibly complex language into English. I'm sure I don't have the appreciation for his writing that I would do if I was reading it in its native Polish. But I will also add, I think the books, they're very good fantasy books, but the writing's not so great. The ideas are what are great, right, and the world building is great. And what the games did is they took that world and they essentially ran with it. There's stuff in the games that is so true to the characters. They fundamentally understand the characters, but they're not in the books.
Right.
Sapkowski didn't write it. It's just really good writing that they themselves have done in-house by being reverential to the material. And I'll just say this, like anyone who played Witcher 3 knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you finish Witcher 3 and you max it out and you can check my Steam, I got 450 hours in that motherfucker, probably more, I don't know. Like, and keep in mind as well, I didn't even play all the Steam version because I got it free with a fucking graphics card, right? The emptiness, because you know you're never going to play anything like that. You're never going to go on a journey like that again. All the quests, all that stuff. It's an incredible game, and it's why people love it so much. Now, that being said, as somebody that read the books, somebody that played the games, I even played the first Witcher when it came out, by the way. The TV series is wank. It's garbage. I can't. I won't. And it's not that they didn't try. I admire the first series because they tried to do all this stuff. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. What you had to do with The Witcher was you had to treat it like X-Files season 1. You can't go straight into, where's fucking, Mulder's sister and all. I need Monster of the Week. He's a monster hunter. Give me Monster of the Week.
I will say, by the way,
the world.
I'm generally someone who was very good when I watch things of keeping track of details. Remember, I had a massively hard time remembering what some of the bigger lore elements in this show were. Yeah,
because they throw it straight out there because they want to get to the big crescendo, the Wild Hunt, the Ciri storyline. They're rushing it. They're rushing it because they're rushing it because I think they know we've realistically got 3 or 4 seasons of this, not 8 or 9 or 10 or 13.
Right.
And unfortunately, so what you miss out on is if I put it this way, did you understand instinctively when you sat down to watch The Witcher? Right, season 1. Did you know what a Witcher was? Could you figure it out from the first episode?
I mean, I could tell that he was killing monsters, but I don't really understand the premise of is he even human? As well? They were. I thought they did a bad job. They tried to make it mysterious, but I think they just did a bad job.
So let me tell you. Obviously, in the books, I mean, because how's this for a fucking premise? It's insane. So explicitly, it's laid out to you very early on what a Witcher is and how they're kind of a dying breed, like these motherfuckers that live up in Kaer Morhen. But obviously,
in season 3, literally that info you're talking about, how the world elves created them or whatever the fuck is an enemy.
Basically what happens is right.
The series storyline maybe that actually.
So to make witches, because basically in the world they live in, there's monsters everywhere, and the thought process is to kill a monster, you have to make a monster. So the witches basically said, right, we'll get kids like orphans, war, child soldiers, homeless people. There's this thing called the law of surprise in the world, which is that you can just say, give me the first thing that comes into your head or whatever the fuck, and you get a kid to give away their firstborn or whatever, and that's what happens with Ciri and Geralt and all that stuff. Anyway, so they end up with a bunch of fucking rejected societal kids, and then you go, it's lovely, they're giving them a home and they're training them to be witches. No, first of all, they pump them full of fucking drugs and potions that kill them. Because to be a Witcher, you have to be fucking mega. So they mutate you. And so most kids die. It's something like 9 out of 10 kids just die immediately from the trial of the gases and all that. So they do that. And then you have to go out and then you have to kill your first monsters and they just fucking launch you out into the swamp. Right? You're doing this. We take you on a run. Kids die doing that as well. So it's horrific. It's horrific. It's cruelty. But it's the only way you can create a Witcher to survive. Now, that to me is a mega first episode pilot premise. Show me that. Because then I am invested and I know what Geralt is. And I know this is a guy with trauma, even though he doesn't talk.
Do you know the part I never added up, dude, is in the first season, one thing they make clear, right, is that wherever he goes, he sort of looked down on this Geralt guy.
Which is a creepy as fuck. Think about the premise.
They don't give you that info, or they just make it seem like it's just they're just looking down on him for no reason. It's all right, weird.
Yeah, but it's even crazier than that societally because witches have a code. Don't do anything for free because what we do is so dangerous and we've suffered so much to be this. So even if someone comes to you and says, I've got a wolf outside and it's fucking scaring my, kids, come and kill it. Even though that's easy job for a witcher, you just walk over and murk it. They demand money. They always demand money. You'd never do it for free. It's a core component of the Witcher's code. And so obviously they're despised because they don't do anything out the goodness of the heart. They only understand cold, hard cash. That's the perception. That's before you even get into the creepy origin story. And anyway, that's how Kaer Morhen all gets fucked up. That's why there's no more witches. That's why Vesemir is even the only dude who even knows how to make witches right now. That is where you start. You don't drop that in. You don't sprinkle that.
Because that is season 3, all that info. You have to watch 3 seasons to get that.
Yeah, no, it's ridiculous, mate. It's ridiculous.
Or 2, I can't remember.
Mate, I'm sure it felt like 3 seasons. So, to my point, I can't even finish the second season. I'm out. They did something as well, which I won't spoil, very early on. I'm just, I don't care. People are telling me, no, but it's a rope-a-dope. They're going to fix it. I don't care. I'm out now. You've fucked up. You've deviated. I want an adaptation that deviates and does something new, sure. Yes. That's too much. And you've fucked up the storytelling anyway to begin with. So to answer Watch Doge's question, where does it rank compared to Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones? I mean, first of all, Lord of the Rings is an immaculate book adaptation that did change swathes of the source material, stayed true to it, and delivered one of the great adaptations in cinematic history. There's no getting away from that, considering it was considered an unfilmable book. And by the way, if you think Lord of the Rings isn't one of the greatest adaptations, go look at Ralph Bakshi's adaptation of it, where he literally tried to be reverential to the source material, and it's absolute garbage, and nobody even talks about that movie anymore. So in Game of Thrones, forget the last 3 seasons, maybe 4, but first 2-3 seasons where they literally meticulously scripted out George R.R. Martin's source material, that's mega. That's Wicked TV. Yeah. So The Witch is not even close to any of that. It's nowhere near. So for me, it's one of the great failures, and I feel sorry for Henry Cavill. He's nailed the part, but everyone else in it sucks. And the script sucks, and the pacing sucks
as well. There's some fucking bad actors in that show. The other thing that kills me about that is it's another one of these shows where it's like y'all are playing right into this fucking meme that you are all going to be in a dystopia with VR goggles in the corner of the room going, this is brilliant in VR, because like how can every single thing on TV be great to you guys? Like literally. I've gotten to the point now where there's so few people I can actually trust on what's good TV and good movies, Richard. Like, there's so few. Because I don't know if you know this, but people love that Witcher show, Richard. They love it, mate. They think it's the shit.
Yeah, but I mean, no, you see that they don't. I won't get into the sidebar. What they're doing is they're talking about what's topical to get engagement. That's all.
Right, okay.
And as we all know from the internet, they don't. You talk about something positively or not at all. See? So how can I get the engagement unless I pretend it's brilliant? You know, think about it. Well, who the fuck are you to review a TV show? At least I studied media. At least I know what, at least I know what that shit is. At least I've done critical, reviews and critical theory about cinema and all this stuff. Written multiple essays. I used to write about that stuff before I wrote about esports. Some esports guy come along going, the popular thing is really good and it's right to be popular. That's just about getting clicks, mate. It's got fuck all to do with reality. First off, do you think this current Navi team will eclipse the lineup in terms of greatness that won everything in 1.6 with Zeus? Or do you think that all the new rosters going into 2022 will stop them in their tracks?
I mean, the problem with that, you have to remember, just the fans who obviously didn't watch, is you aren't just talking about a good team there. That was a team that won all of the majors in a year. 3, won 4 majors in a row. We're in 5 major finals in a row. And in the first year, won something like, I'm going to guess, 10 tournaments and broke the prize money record. So what you're basically saying is they're probably the main contender for best 1.6 team ever. So will Navi and CSGO this line be better than the best? Well, I'm obviously going to have to go ahead and err on not even the side of caution, just the most likelihood. No, they won't. I doubt that will happen, because that is essentially the only team that would be even comparable is probably Astralis, the great team there. So I just think you've put the height. I know you're trying to do the contrast between the Navi 1.6 and CS, but you've picked a one that basically it's like saying pick whoever you think the best is now. I'll give you an example. If you think I'll pick a random one. If you think that fucking Julio Jones is the best wide receiver, it's like going, will he be Jerry Rice? Well, no, because no one is. Jerry Rice there's only one Jerry Rice, and that's the problem. So you've given an example that's too far out of reach for that one. You've got to give me one that's more within bounds. Yeah,
I mean, look, I'll just say this as somebody that obviously watched that 1.6 team. They were because remember as well, when they were formed, they weren't meant to be good. They weren't meant to be that. I mean, they were maybe meant to be good, but they weren't meant to be that. The whole point of the project was to essentially try and create a super team from that region that could go out there and mix it up with the Swedes and all the big boys. But you weren't expecting them to break all the fucking records and win all the fucking major events. That was never meant to happen. So that year that Navi broke the prize money record and won all those majors that you're talking about, that's not even just one of the best. That's not even a contender for best 1.6 team of all time. In isolation, that's a contender for the greatest esports team of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
So when you start talking about, is this team going to beat it? Obviously, I can't say yes, because that would immediately... I mean, I would love it if they did, because then Simple will always be in contention, as I said, not just to be talked about within CSGO terms, but to be talked about in all versions Counterstrike, all versions of Esports. Simple becomes a faker-like character. You know, you can then have this incredible conversation about who's the greatest Esports competitor of all time, who's the greatest Esports team of all time. But I mean, they've got a long way to go, and unfortunately, as we saw, I mean, listen, I know they won the Blast, the World Finals at the end of the year. And they did it through battling back through the lower bracket. What were they doing in the lower bracket if they're the best team in the world? They dropped maps as well. And suddenly what you realize is they're not some mad immortal team. You know, like, you know, you've got. I'm going to judge them on the first 3 months of 2022.
Yes.
Let's see where we are like March. And then, yeah, then we can start to have a much more meaningful conversation.
The best example ever. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, it's all for nothing if they don't go and win everything at the start of this year either.
That's the point I was going to make. The problem is this, and I've found this myself, because obviously I've been in this position a million times. The problem with an era is this, is the momentum psychologically of the era is felt when you're trying to gauge if it's happening during the era. So here's the problem, and the best example ever is Team Liquid 2019.
Yeah.
Right? If I told you before the major, which I obviously did do this content slightly after the major when they didn't win it. If I said before the major when they'd won whatever it was, 6 tournaments in a row and like 8 out of 9 tournaments and a bazillion best of threes in a row. If I told you at that point in time, Grand Slam in the record fashion, will this team have a major? You would say, of course. Because the logic would be, even if they don't win the major, well, they'll win like ESL New York after that. And if they don't win ESL New York, they'll win Starlight. And if they don't win that, because the logic was they're winning everything. So in your brain, even if they go down a step, well, they'll still be the second best, right? You know, maybe who can beat them? What people always forget is this: winning is binary. You either win or you don't. So the real problem in Counter-Strike is it is so hard to win LAN tournaments that when you are winning them, it feels like this will never end. And when you stop, it might never happen ever again. So like Team Liquid, who if people don't know, the reason I purposely use that example, they've never won a big tournament ever since then. 2+ years later, we're still waiting for that next tournament. So the problem was, Team Liquid was that close to an era. But that part never came. So the problem Navi has is, as you say, if next year the first big tournament on LAN comes along and say Vitality beats them, maybe they don't make the final, maybe they're in the semis, the quarters, maybe they lose to Heroic or something, then all of a sudden all this talk just really quickly goes away. Really quickly, I'm afraid. Like, it feels like because of the momentum building up now, like, yeah, they have to at least get a few more months and taper off. Unfortunately, Counter-Strike is a really cruel game. In esports in general, you don't taper off like that. You look at Carrigan's career, mate. You're at the top, and then you're 15th, and that's like overnight. So, unfortunately, I do think we got to wait a few months before we know on this one.
Yeah, I definitely.
I was caught up with the excitement, though. It's a great convo to have, obviously.
Yeah, well, and again, you know, we're going to wait and see. And just to pick on the points that he brought up about those other teams, I'm going to wait and see what the new look Vitality does. I mean, for me, they're the one that have made the biggest moves. The power players, G2 with Munazi, I know what they're doing, right? I get it. But for me, Vitality have made the better moves in the off-season to challenge that number one spot. And obviously as well, who knows what Gambit are going to do. Maybe they do learn from all this experience, and they're the lineup that's been together the longest and stuck together. So there's lots of questions to get answered at the start of next year. It's an exciting time for CS, for real. Lonnie said, should you introduce a stretch goal on Patreon for VODs to be uploaded in a timely fashion? So even though this is a dig at Sam, which I don't like, I'm gonna address this. YouTube has undergone massive changes lately. So the last VOD was in clearing for 4 days.
But the ad rev part he's talking about, the monetization. The same thing happens to me sometimes. You just have to wait for it to fucking go, don't you?
Yeah, because so for those who don't know, and I'll explain it again, right? I get a VOD, whether or not Sam gives it to me in a timely fashion or not. I upload it to YouTube. I know my content is advertiser friendly because I don't make, I don't even know what would be considered un-advertiser friendly when I look at some of the shit that's on YouTube.
Of course.
Right? So I then upload it. I'm instantly demonetized because I am on the naughty list. So I get the yellow $ of death next to the video. And then you have to click on appeal. And then as you appeal it, YouTube goes, you've been wrong about so many of these videos in the past. They have, on appeal, they have monetized every video. And yet they have the audacity to give you that warning because it is being done by an algorithm and not humans, no matter how much they fucking pretend. right? But now what they've done is recently they've made some changes. They won't tell you what they are because YouTube never does. The idea it would ever be a transparent platform. They put out a blog post every now and then saying, yes, we are battling all the hateful people on our platform. They never explain to you just the stuff you need to know, the ins and outs of what makes something advertiser friendly or doesn't, why all of a sudden my entire channel isn't advertiser friendly. Like my Clips channel, there was 120 videos on that. All of them got demonetized overnight after they've been monetized. Why? I don't know. Griff don't know. No one knows. And then Griff had to go through and manually appeal all of them. And guess what? About 85% got remonetized on appeal. They'd already been appealed. I'm appealing appeals at this point. So when we put a video up, right? My expectation is when I click that appeal button, it's going to get done in a timely fashion because the record should tell you every time I've appealed it, you fucking agreed with me. But no, now YouTube. Now, over the holidays, every video we've uploaded, it's been up there and it has took between 3 and 4 days to just get ad revenue on.
Not gonna lie, mate. I put that question in thinking like, oh, this should be a funny one, mate. How dare you fucking snap at Sam? Because I was gonna say like, oh yeah, the last one got stuck in YouTube jail. I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring that up.
No, it's not just the last one. It's been the last however many. Mate, fucking Ian Armeen, Football Manager, just gets stuck in purgatory for 4 days and then they're like, we haven't done any content for a while. It's not my fault. YouTube's a garbage platform. Like, you know, at the end of the day, does Sam work his balls off? Probably not. Right? His balls are definitely still on, right? But at the end of the day, fucking, it's not his fault if it takes an additional 4 days because YouTube don't want to put ads on it. That's a decision I'll make. Right, Reykjavik on Steam. If the pandemic is to blame for TikTok gaining more visits than Google this past year, is that what Google is saying, is it? Probably. What changes are there in the esports industry that are likely to be seismic shifts?
I will say, by the way, you know one thing that never gets brought up? And this is mental if you think about it contextually, is what an absurd competitive advantage TikTok has over any other platform. Because since it's Chinese, there's no fucking copyright protection. So if anyone has ever used TikTok, it is all the same stolen material from other people. You take the same song, and then you just put your shit behind it. You can't do that everywhere else. You get your shit taken down. Like, you can't have all your content just be stolen. So, like, personally, I don't even know what the TikTok analogy is. I assume he means how the shift has been. Let me think. What's the most seismic shift? Like, I think the most obvious one. Yeah, go on.
No, you first.
My most obvious one is the one that always goes under the radar. This is how I know people in the industry are dumb as fuck, Richard. People in Counterstrike, there's journalists and people who work for big sites and TOs who just don't even have their finger on the pulse. Why is no one else bothered about that thing that ESL put out not that long ago, where they essentially implied it's good to have online tournaments and have a hybrid circuit? They basically, everyone else is going with the lie of like, we'll be back to normal soon on LAN. ESL basically is ready for they're ready for the great esports reset, aren't they? They're ready to just go into this new world where you have to forget there was ever only LAN circuits. Like, as far as I can tell, that's a seismic shift right there, because I'm already thinking to myself, like, there can't be a mouse sports fanatic thing where it's like, man, I'm good on LAN. If you aren't good on that line anymore, you just aren't going to be a top Counter-Strike team or player. Like, it's going to be both online and LAN as far as I can tell. It's going to be a different generation completely. Like, the skill set required, the mentality required is very different. So I think that's enormous if you're a CS fan. Like, it's thrown so many things out of the window that I could take for granted when everything was on LAN.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, you know, my take on it is this: the big seismic thing is, unfortunately, because Zoomers have no attention span and social media and corporations are just evil, they're going to exploit the fact you don't have any attention span. And so TikTok was the start of it. That blew up and it's so popular. And if you look at it now, everyone's making shorts. Because what we really need to do is to get away from long-form content, even though podcasting is still the huge growth industry. It's been that in media for the last 3 years, minimum. But, you know, what we need to do is give you little cunts 60-second snippets of everything, because the idea you sit down and watch a 10-minute video, it's 10 minutes, it's 10 minutes. Like, you're doing so much with your lives, right? What is it, between fucking flossing and fucking, you know what I mean? Deciding, which version of a fucking short back and sides that I'm going to pretend's an original haircut today. Am I going to be rocking? You fucking idiots. So yeah, we all have to give you fucking 60-second bite-sized snippets, and everybody's doing it. YouTube's doing it. Twitter's going to come back and do it. Everybody's, you know, like Vine, like, you know, everybody's doing, Facebook's doing it. I'm sure it'll be in that metaverse or whatever fucking he's up to over there. Everyone's doing it. So unfortunately, here's the reality you're going to see of the seismic shift is long form content in esports is going to really, really struggle, because in every other area, these Zoomers are going to be fed this fucking diet of attention deficit disorder friendly content. It's just going to be there you go. That's everything you need to know. It's not everything you need to know, because nuance and content, no matter what Americans want to tell you, nuance and context will always matter to everything throughout history. We're just living in a dark period of time where we're letting Americans tell us it's not real, and you're all buying into it because Americans are cool and American media is cool, so let's just get rid of that. Right, brilliant. That's a seismic shift, because it will change how esports works. It'll change the way that you consume media. It'll change what your content creators do. Because also, just to say this without naming any names, what you think these content creators, these big fucking YouTubers that only they game the algorithm. They game it. They only make what's popular. They're all experimenting with shorts right now. They don't care. They don't care about the content they make. They care about being a big YouTuber. They care about having views. They care about having a big subscriber count up there. They'll never go out on a limb and make something that's like hugely unpopular or try something. You ever notice whenever they do that, whenever they roll the dice, they don't roll the dice because of you, and they don't roll the dice because of what they want. They're just like, I'm bored of this, because they've done it for so long and it's so formulaic. Why don't I try something new? And they try something new and they get a fraction of the views and they go, oh no, I've got 2 million subscribers in this video and he got 50,000. Do you want to do something different or don't you? Make a call. But no, they don't care. They then, trust me, fastidiously, they go in the back end and they look in the analytics and they go, oh no, but look, because I released it here and because it was this, and the people stop watching it. They all know what keywords work in a title, what tags work in the metadata. They all know it's all they care about. It's not about the content. It's not about quality control. It's just about what makes them money and what gets clicks. And so, unfortunately, the more and more we move into this short way of thinking, it kills all the long-form fucking content that you want. It's going to make YouTubers even more lazy and fucking derivative than they actually are now. So enjoy that. That's the world you built, Zoomers. Last question. Orky, did any of you get a cool gift for Christmas? What realistic gift did you not get that you would have liked to have got?
I mean, I will say I'm a person that is very, very difficult to buy gifts for, because essentially I'm in a very unique position, which is I can literally buy and probably have every book or game or music or fucking film I ever wanted in my entire life. So unfortunately, you can't even like know me and go, I'll give you a random thing. He's into Dune, so get him that book. It's like, I'll probably already have it if I want it. So unfortunately, the only way you can really buy me a gift is you have to just make it something like thoughtful or something like cool, unique to you. So unfortunately, I have, but they're not things I can mention here. They're just things that are personal. I've never had anything like super duper cool in the last few years, put out there.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sort of similar stuff. I didn't get anything mega for this Christmas. I did have a nice touch, because what I did on my street was, right, because like you know, like it's a bit weird where I live. It's like country, but you know, people are all like in a row on this one side, and then it's just fields and fucking all of that. So basically, I like bought everybody a bottle of champagne on the fucking street I'm on, right? And went round each house and fucking gave everybody the bottle of champagne, like, Merry Christmas, thanks for being a good neighbour and all that. And I'm not expecting anything back for that, but like, I had some nice gifts as a result. People coming round. One fella up the road, he got me a bottle of scotch. And fucking, we were having I said, hey, I'll crack this now. We were having a fucking drink on my doorstep and a chat. That's nice, you know, human interactions, you know, where you sort of break down the digital barriers we all exist in. You actually go and, dare I say, touch grass and talk to humans. Turns out that it's actually not bad when you do it on occasion. You realise all of this is just bullshit and noise when you have moments like that. So, is there a gift I would have liked to have got? Just further away from esports, if that's possible. It'll happen. So there you go. There's the questions, all done. One final shout out to the sponsors, of course. NordVPN, our VPN sponsor. Go to nordvpn.com/RLS. 74% off the VPN that we like. And Steel Series, obviously, if you want to get 10% off any Steel Series material, including their Wicked Prime range, which is what I use, go to the Steel Series store, use Richard Lewis, no space, you get 10% off anything there. And of course, our patrons. Try not to react, Duncan. $100 patron, Benakagi, Carve,
What? Just keep going. Sorry, I just bring my hand down.
Yeah, it does happen. Berakagi, Carve, Cathal, J-Dubs, Jerky's Minion, Kurtz Edits, Marcus Kiumpar, Michael, Tobias Bernasconi, Will the Weed Wrangler, and our $50 patrons, Adam Ox, Alex C, A Rama, Bacon, Can of Pasito, Chronic Alcoholic, CMAC 1991, Dancer Master, Echo, Fursock, Gerhan Kaya, John P, Judas, Miss Alcoholic, Nolan, Atarian, Reykjavik on Steam, Sard Sawar, Shine, The Bear, Bitcoin Cash Podcast, Tim Frost, Lonnie, Watch Doge, Zumba and Zarathenia. That was By the Numbers. We'll see you next time, probably live. Until then, take care.